Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Everyone needs to be all up in my business this morning because I've got stuff to do. Of course they do. Hi. How are you today? Yeah, me too. So, welcome. So let me tell you a little bit about this trial, if they will let me. This is an Richland County, Ohio corrections officer who has been charged with, I didn't write down the charges, reckless homicide and something manslaughter as it relates to an inmate death. And he was not the only one involved. There was multiple officers involved. This is just his trial. Now, the thing that some of you are not going to like is that this trial has already concluded and it ended in a hung jury. So I can't give you the verdict that you all wait for, but as a consolation, I thought it might be interesting if we selected a group of our viewers and let them deliberate at the end of the trial to see the differences in opinions and kind of how the process works when you bring a bunch of strangers together and they have to come together for a consensus. Now, this may work, this may not work. I have no idea, but we're going to try it because I like trying things. And everybody has been asking about a mock trial for a while, and this is step one to getting there. So let's see how it works. They have agreed not to read the chat. They have agreed to mute it when I tell them to mute it. So we'll see what happens. This came from a local station. It's not Law and Crime, so it's not perfectly cut from the beginning. Sometimes the start of it is cut off a little bit and things like that. There is some violent content related to the actual event that happened, but I will give you a warning before that happens. And what was the other thing? I can't read my paper because your fat butt's in my way. Penny has to go on a diet. She has to have her thyroid checked because she is like super overweight, super overweight. Yeah. Anyways, I am going to have my camera off for most of the day. I'm kind of feeling kind of blah. My son's best friend was killed in a car accident over the weekend, along with another kid, and 2 other teens were critically injured. And talk to your kids about how dangerous it is to be on the road, and your grandkids and kids you see on the street. Like, you see a kid walking down the street, stop and tell him, hey, if you get in a car, be careful, because God, it's dangerous out there. And it just breaks my heart. Like, oh, they're so young. They haven't even lived. So I'm kind of in a funk and not feeling great. So I'm going to have my camera off, but I will be watching. I will be in the chat, and I will jump on if you guys have any questions or need any explanations. So we are going to get started. It's going to go straight into opening statements. This is going to be the prosecution's opening statement. Thank you all for coming and hanging out. You are the best. I love you all, and I appreciate the support more than anything I can't even express. So
evidence will show that the circumstances brought about why we are here today. So a question that you must answer for yourself, probably the primary question that you must answer for yourself and as a collective group, is very, very simple. What killed Alex Rios? Was it, as the medical examiner suggests, and you will hear, some excited delirium? Quite frankly, ladies and gentlemen, I had to look it up for myself. Was it excited delirium? Was it an accident? Was it a sequence of circumstances that were brought about, something akin to effectively Mr. Rios bringing it on himself that resulted in his tragic death?
Yeah, this is what happens when you don't read your notes. You forget about that part. So this was at a jail. He was picked up on a misdemeanor charge. I think it was a DV charge. And he had drugs in his system. Allegedly, maybe. There's so much controversy. There's so many layers to this. It's not just about the actual action of his death. So his death was ruled accidental by the coroner, who attributed it to excited delirium. Now, excited delirium is not a recognized cause of death anymore. It was many years ago. Now it's not. So there was a big controversy over that. One of the people who's going to testify today is going to be the assistant medical examiner, and her testimony is crazy. It's nuts. And then tomorrow, I can't tell you because the jurors can't hear it. Anyways, I keep forgetting. There's only so many things I can say. So that's basically the whole gist of it. There's a lot of different things going on, layers to the trial that you're going to hear about what the cause of death is and what things could have attributed to it. And the parents have actually filed a lawsuit to have the cause of death changed. And then that prompted an investigation from the Ohio Bureau of Criminal Investigations. So it got bumped up from a local level all the way up to the top. So yeah, there's a lot going on, but he was in a local jail, not a prison, misdemeanor charge. So here we go.
Or will it be what the evidence we believe shows, and that is very simple, that Mark Cooper, as a corrections officer, during the skirmish with Mr. Rios on the concrete floor of the Richland County Jail, stood on his back, used excessive pressure, used excessive force, used techniques that are both not taught in use of force training in what's called, and you will hear this term, the continuum of use of force, but actually taught against. We believe the evidence will show that in the moments, in the 8+ seconds, when, as the record indicates, a 250-pound corrections officer stood on the back of Alexander Rios with both feet for 8 seconds, he shoved the life out of his body. He shoved the air out of his body, and he shoved the life out of his body. But Mr. Rios didn't die that day. He died 7 days later in a hospital bed. Hooked to tubes, continuous intubation, continuous medical intervention, all to no avail. Because he was brain dead. And he was brain dead because he was starved for oxygen. And he was starved for oxygen because Mark Cooper stood on him and shoved it out of him. That's what killed Mr. Rios. Now, during the course of this trial, you're going to hear from experts. We hired an expert. You're going to hear him testify. He's going to tell you the medical explanation for what I've already explained to you in layman's terms. I'm far better suited for those terms than medical terms. That's why I didn't go to medical school. But you may also hear from a defense expert.
Yeah.
I'll strike that if you wish.
Okay. All right.
That's fine. You may hear from other witnesses who talk about excited delirium. They're also going to tell you, Dr. Mitchell, our expert, is going to tell you, excited delirium is not recognized by the American Medical Association. It's not recognized by the National Association of Medical Examiners. It's not recognized effectively. It's not recognized by any organized, accepted medical organization. It's not recognized. It's not a diagnosis. It's not in the DSM. It's not in the medical manuals. It has no symptomology that has been vetted and recognized. You're going to hear about superhuman strength. That superhuman strength, therefore, it was excited delirium. That's not the case. You're going to hear about other conditions. Delirium. He was delirious. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, he was pissed. He was angry. And he was expressing himself, but he was not delirious. Listen to the video. You're going to see a video. It is a disturbing video. But you listen. You pay attention, please, to the details of that video, not the big screen, not the tragedy that unfolds, but the details that go into it. You will see the defendant's feet on his back, both feet. You will see him have to lean on the wall to support himself while he has both feet on Mr. Rios' back. But don't just pay attention to those 8 seconds or 7 seconds. Pay attention to the time, the extent of time that Mark Cooper put pressure on Mr. Rios' back with his one foot applying pressure, with both feet applying pressure, with a knee, his full body weight on a knee on Mr. Rios' back, applying pressure. All in a single continuum lasting 3 minutes or more. And then I want you to pay close attention to Mr. Rios and his responses. They talk about delirium. Well, as I understand delirium, I'll leave that to you. But here's what I know. When Mr. Rios was tased, and you will see that, it obviously impacted him. You heard him, you will hear him respond. You will hear him say, and please, I'm using the words that were used in that video. You're a dumbass. And then you're going to hear one of the corrections officers, the female who was videoing this incident, say, no, you're the dumbass. But then please pay attention to what Mr. Rios responds with. I wasn't talking to you. That's not delirious. That's a man who, under whatever pressure he was having brought to bear, was completely aware of his surroundings and knew not only what he was saying, but who he was saying it to. That's what those facts establish. Now you're going to hear about superhuman strength. Mr. Rios was a very fit, very athletic, very strong 28-year-old young man. And as I've already said, he was upset. And yes, he did struggle. And yes, he did resist. But not to the point of death sentence. You'll hear that during the autopsy, there was a piece of plastic removed from his stomach contents. It will be suggested that that somehow is relative to drugs. There's no proof of that. There's no evidence to support that whatsoever. That is speculation by anyone who references it. Well, you'll hear that. I can't tell you what The one thing that we do know about that piece of plastic, we don't know what its origin is, but we know it didn't have any drugs on it, because that was tested, and you'll hear about that. Now you're going to hear about amphetamines. You're going to hear that he had amphetamines in his system. And that is one of those drugs that created this element of superhuman strength and all these other things that led to the final determination of excited delirium. In fact, it was a presumptive positive. That's what was found in the ER. That's what was found when he was taken into the hospital in a comatose or in an unresponsive state, I should say. Presumptive positive urine screening. There was never any further testing done. The record is absolutely absent of any toxicology screen until after he was dead. And by then, his system had been full of medications for over a week from the hospital trying to save his life and are virtually useless for our purposes. Remember that, please. All of these things, all of these factors come to play because the Richland County Coroner echoed the referenced statement from the Montgomery County Medical Examiner's Office who conducted the autopsy of excited delirium. You're going to hear from Dr. Paul. Dr. Paul conducted the autopsy. We anticipate that she's going to tell you it wasn't excited delirium at all. She's going to tell you how those circumstances came to be and how that was published. She's also going to tell you that she saw the video, the one that you will see, and she found it equally difficult. I don't want to take any more of your time this morning. That's the case in its substance. You're going to hear from other witnesses. You're going to hear from the BCI agent who did the investigation. You're going to hear perhaps from the BCI agent who actually went and attended the autopsy in Montgomery County. You're going to hear from Mrs. Mold. You're going to hear from Tony Mold. Tony Mold is Alexander's mother. I'm going to ask her to come in here. I'm going to ask her to tell you who Alex was. Because Alex was more than a name on a piece of paper. He was more than the byproduct of a death certificate. He was a son. He was a father. He was a friend, and he was family. He worked in our community. He engaged with his children, and he loved and was in return loved by his family. He's not a name on a piece of paper. I ask you to consider all these things. I ask you to, as has been stated, differing minds can have differing opinions. But opinions, particularly in light of the fact of the level and gravity of the medical evidence, opinions have to coincide with the facts, not sidestep them. Some people call it different things. I have always, in my trials, I have always referred to it as the Wizard of Oz syndrome. Ignore the man behind the curtain. Open that curtain, ladies and gentlemen. Please, look at that evidence. You watch those minutes with Mr. Rios held on the floor. You watch the conduct of the defendant, Mark Cooper. And then, I believe, you'll find him guilty of the charges as they have been posted. Thank you.
Thank you, Prosecutor Thompson. We'll now hear from Attorney Sean Boone with the defendant's opening statement.
Thank you, Judge. Morning, ladies and gentlemen. So, I guess I'll start by saying I couldn't disagree more with what this case is about. Prosecutor Thompson here said the only question that you all need to answer is what killed Alexander Rios. That's just flat out not true. The judge is going to give you the jury instructions. He is going to tell you what the law is. He is going to tell you that the first part of the first two counts is you have to determine whether or not Mark Cooper caused the death of Alexander Rios. But he's not going to stop there. He's going to tell you that you have to make a second finding. He's going to tell you that in count one, that was as a proximate result, and he'll define for you what a lot of these terms mean, but that was as a proximate result of Mark Cooper committing a felonious assault. Again, he'll define those terms for you. Count two, same thing, but as a proximate result of Mark Cooper committing an assault. Now, count three, he's going to tell you is reckless homicide. Again, yes, they have to prove that Mark Cooper here was the one who caused the death of Alexander Rios, but he has to do that in a reckless manner. The judge is going to tell you what recklessness means, and with his permission, I'm going to read from the Ohio Revised Code what that actually is.
Any objection?
No, Judge.
All right, go ahead.
The Ohio Revised Code says a person acts recklessly when, with heedless indifference to the consequences, the person disregards a substantial and unjustifiable risk that the person's conduct is likely to cause a certain result or is likely to be of a certain nature. A person is reckless with respect to circumstances when, with heedless indifference to the consequences, the person disregards a substantial and unjustifiable risk that circumstances are likely to exist. Now that's a mouthful, okay? The judge is going to give you that instruction at the end of the trial, and you'll have that written down, okay? But he's going to tell you that you not only have to find that he was the one who caused the death, which I believe you're going to have trouble doing. He's going to tell you that it has to be in a reckless manner. And that is where use of force comes into play. Because, ladies and gentlemen, this was a use of force incident. Whether they like it or not, it was. Now, you're going to hear that this incident happened on September 19th of 2019, nearly 4 years ago. And you're going to hear that it happened down in that area where we just were, down in the jail. But it's important to take a step back and to learn about how these two lives, the lives of Mark Cooper and the lives of Alexander Rios, intersected that day. What you're going to hear is that Mark Cooper's currently 56 years old. He was 52 back then. You're going to hear that he was raised in Richland County. In his 20s, he moved to Florida, and he began a career in corrections. He was trained down there and earned some certificates down in Florida, ultimately moved back to Ohio and began his career at the Richland County Jail in 2003. He attended the training academy at the Huron County Jail, and ultimately in 2004, he earned a certificate from the Ohio Peace Officer Training Commission for completing that training. He worked continuously at the Richland County Jail from 2003 up to this incident and on past this incident into December of 2021. Now, you're also going to hear about Alexander Rios.
Your Honor, may we approach?
Yeah, come on.
Thank you, Judge. As I was saying, you're going to hear about Alexander Rios. You're going to hear that Mr. Rios was 28 years old at the time of his death. And you are going to hear that Mr. Rios was a son. He was a father. He was a high school athlete. he was a friend, he was family, he was all of those things. That's absolutely true. But what you're going to hear is that he was also addicted to methamphetamines. You're going to hear that back in the summer of 2019, he'd gotten himself clean. He was working, he was doing construction and landscaping, things like that. But in the weeks leading up to this incident, he had relapsed. He began using methamphetamine again. You're going to hear that on the night of September 18th into the early morning hours of September 19th, there was a call to the Wakeman Police Department. Now, Wakeman is up in Huron County, just north of here. The Wakeman Police Department, they received a call on Mr. Rios. You're going to hear that ultimately the Wakeman Police Department ended up at Mr. Rios' mother's house. You're going to hear that Mr. Rios' mother gave permission for officers to go inside the house, and ultimately they found Mr. Rios hiding in a basement crawl space. They were all able to talk Mr. Rios into coming out of the crawl space, and they arrested him without issue. Now you're going to hear that that arrest was based on a felony warrant out of Richland County. That is how Mr. Rios ends up being arrested in Huron County, but ultimately ending up in the Richland County jail. The Wakeman Police Department drove him to the county line, where the Richland County Sheriff's Office took custody of him and brought him to the Richland County jail. You're going to see that it's about 3 a.m. when Alexander Rios is booked into the Richland County jail. You're going to see that officers Longshore and Mahon were the ones that were involved in this booking process. And you're going to see that there are videos of portions of this booking process. And you may have seen down at the jail, but I think you'll hear evidence of, there are cameras all over that place. You can essentially follow somebody all the way through that jail as they're moving through. And in fact, there's video of Mr. Rios when he enters the jail doing that. Now, you're going to hear that he was booked seemingly without incident. You're going to hear that he was taken upstairs to a part of the jail we didn't see, and was placed into a pod or dorm area where there are other inmates all housed in a big room. You're going to hear that everything with Mr. Rios was seemingly fine until about noon on the 19th, about 9 hours after he had been there. You're going to hear that officers went into the pod to get a different inmate for release, and you're going to hear that Mr. Rios approached Corrections Officer Scruggs. You're going to hear that he approached Corrections Officer Scruggs and told him that he was going to hurt himself. Mr. Rios told Scruggs that. That is why Mr. Rios was taken out of the pod area and placed into the suicide prevention protocol. You're going to hear that he was taken down to that booking room, down where we were. You're going to hear that his clothes were removed and he was given a suicide prevention vest, or what's known at the jail as the turtle suit. And you're going to hear that he was placed in a single-person administrative segregation cell. It's that cell that you all walked into. He was placed into that cell by himself. Now, you're going to hear that Mr. Rios was just in that cell, not doing much of anything for most of the day, most of the evening, into the nighttime hours. But what you're going to hear is that sometime around 11 p.m., his behavior changed. He started acting bizarre. He started saying strange things, okay? And Prosecutor Thompson here alluded to those. He started saying, I'm not supposed to be here. That guy has my stuff. Things like that, things that didn't make sense. Okay? But on top of that, what you're going to see, and it's where this video begins, and one thing that I agree with is that this is a disturbing video. It is. Ladies and gentlemen, Alexander Rios lost his life that day. It is a disturbing video, but it's important to watch, and it's important to break down and see what was going on. And this video begins with Mr. Rios standing on top of that 4 foot or so cinder block wall. He's standing on it. He's telling officers, I'm not supposed to be here, just open the door. You're going to hear that he was requesting to talk to the big boss. And you're going to hear that officers made an inference that seems like he's on drugs. You're going to hear that. You're going to hear one of the officers say it in the video. Now, let's talk a little bit about the jail. You were down there. At any point in time, the Richland County Jail houses between 150 and 200 inmates. Most of them are housed in those pod or dorm type areas, but as we saw, there are single person cells in the jail. Now, when we were down there, you noticed that there was no one in any of those cells. Well, on a normal day, and you'll see in this case, there were people in each, maybe not each one of those cells, but in a number of those cells. There were different inmates that were down there for any number of reasons. You're going to hear that the corrections officers at the jail are responsible for the safety and security of all inmates, as well as all COs and anyone else who may be coming in and out of the jail. And you're going to hear that in a setting like this, as you would expect, there are certain times where circumstances necessitate the use of force against an inmate. You are going to hear about this continuum of force. You're going to actually see the Richland County policy on the use of force. I believe it's going to be put up there, and you're going to have a copy of it in your hands that you can read. It's a color-coded system. And what it tells you is that the use of force is based upon how the person against whom the force is being used is behaving. Okay? So you're going to get that policy. And with that in mind, when you watch this video, you're essentially going to see that continuum of force being put into place. Mr. Rios is standing on the 4-foot wall. Remember, he's in a suicide prevention vest in a single cell because he said he's going to hurt himself. You're going to hear that Lieutenant Odell down at the jail starts speaking to Rios, is trying to get him to voluntarily come down off of the wall. You're going to hear that he gives him numerous opportunities to come down and get cuffed up. But he doesn't. He doesn't comply. He won't come down. So Lieutenant Odell makes the decision to go ahead and open the door and get him down. Now, what you'll hear is that there are policies for this as well. And you'll hear that an extraction team is put in place. Now, what's an extraction team? Well, it's just a number of COs that are there to help with getting an inmate out of the cell. And you're going to see that there are 4 other COs there at this time helping with this extraction. What you're going to see is that as soon as they open that door, Alexander Rios jumps off that wall, bursts through the 4 COs that are standing there in an effort to contain him, and he escapes detention. He gets out of his cell. He starts running in that circle around the bookend room. You're going to see that he ends up over near that door that we came in and out of. You're going to see that Officer Gartner runs around and ultimately is the first one to put hands on Mr. Rios. You're going to see that he tries to grab him around his shoulder area, and you're going to see that Alexander Rios tosses Officer Gartner off of him. You're going to see Officer Prendergast is ultimately able to get a hold of Rios and take him to the ground. You're going to see then that the 4 officers, and I think at this point it's important to note that Mr. Cooper is not part of that extraction team. He's not there initially. He hears a call for assistance over the radio and comes in later. Now, you won't really be able to see it on the handheld camera, but there are other camera views that you'll be able to see when Mr. Cooper comes in to assist in this situation. So you'll see that Officer Mahon ultimately ends up taking hold of the camera so that Odell can join in because they are not having any success restraining Mr. Rios at this point. Even with 5 officers on him, trying to restrain him, he's pushing up. He's able to get to his knees. He's pushing off the ground. And yes, you're going to hear that the officer said that Alexander Rios was exhibiting extreme strength, superhuman strength. You're going to hear that Officer Mahon starts saying, tase him, tase him. And you're going to hear that ultimately Officer Longshore gets his taser out and fires a taser. Now, at this point, Mr. Cooper has just joined the situation. You're going to see that when Officer Longshore fires that taser, it's right about the time that Mr. Cooper first places his hands on Mr. Rios. What you're going to see is that instead of that taser hitting Mr. Rios, that taser hits Mr. Cooper right in the hand. You're going to see his reaction. You're going to see him go back. He ultimately rips the wire out. Now the probe remained in his hand, but he's able to rip the wire out. And you're going to see that, yes, the taser does have some effect on Alexander Rios. But what you're going to see is that it does not bring him into compliance. He's still rolling around on the ground. He's still refusing to be restrained. He's still fighting with officers. And you're going to see that Officer Prendergast also has his taser out. You're going to see that in this fight with officers, Alexander Rios has his hands on Officer Prendergast's taser. Now, you're going to see that ultimately the officers, using their body weight, are able to get Mr. Rios in a flat prone position on the ground in an attempt to get his arms behind his back and get him cuffed. They're also attempting to shackle his legs during this. And you're going to see that eventually Mr. Cooper comes back in an effort to assist, and yes, he puts his foot on the upper back and neck region of Mr. Rios. You're going to see he has it there, and you're going to see that there's eventually a shift in the officers' positions. Officer Prendergast shifts down to deal with Mr. Rios' arm. Officer Gardner reaches up to grab Mr. Rios' head, and that causes Mr. Cooper to shift to his left. This causes his foot to end up on the upper back and neck region of Mr. Rios. And yes, you're going to see that for about 7 seconds, as all of these officers are struggling with Mr. Rios, he is not cuffed, he is not restrained at this point, Mr. Cooper lifts his second foot off of the ground. You're going to see about 7 seconds later, he puts his foot back on the ground, and about that same time, you're going to hear a taser, I believe, inadvertently go off. About 18 seconds after Cooper puts his foot back on the ground, you're going to hear officers continuing to yell at Mr. Rios to let go of the cuff. Let go of the cuff. Now, you're going to see that they're ultimately able to get him shackled, get him cuffed behind his back, get shackles on his legs, and as they are picking him up, officers notice that he's turning blue. You're going to see that as they notice that he's turning blue, they start calling the squad. They start putting emergency response procedures into place immediately. They get an AED. They begin CPR. And they continue this until the squad comes. Now, what you're going to hear is that Mr. Rios was ultimately taken to the hospital that night, and life-saving measures were unsuccessful. He died September 27, 2019. Now, what you're going to hear is that as soon as this happened, this incident occurred, the Richland County Sheriff's Office Patrol Division, which is different from the jail division of the Sheriff's Department, was immediately notified. You're going to hear that, I'm going to call him Detective Radio. I think it's Radojcic is his name, but he goes by Detective Radio. You're going to hear that he was assigned to the case and he immediately began his investigation. But what you're also going to hear is that soon after Mr. Rios died on the 27th, Richland County brought in BCI, Bureau of Criminal Investigation. It's the investigative arm of the Attorney General's office. It's who Special Agent Lanehart here works for, and he was assigned the case. You're going to hear that after Mr. Rios passed away, he was taken to the Montgomery County Coroner's office so that an autopsy could be performed. And you're going to hear a whole lot in this case about causes and manners of death. Okay? I think that most of this case, most of the testimony you're going to hear is probably going to be about that. It wouldn't surprise me if you hear from 4, 5, 6 doctors who all will tell you what cause and manner of death is, how they came to their opinions, and what their opinions are. And it wouldn't surprise me if each and every one of those doctors may tell you something a little bit different, or a lot different. But his body was sent to the Montgomery County Coroner's Office, where Dr. Paul, a forensic pathology fellow, like a student, under the supervision of Dr. Lee Lehman, who was the licensed forensic pathologist and the chief deputy coroner in Montgomery County, performed the autopsy, and they made the finding that the cause of death was excited delirium. Okay? Now, they also found that the manner of death was accident. And you're going to hear what cause of death is, what manner of death is, and what the different manners of death can be, because there's a small list. I think there's 6 of them. Now, you're going to hear what excited delirium was. And I say was because I don't disagree with Mr. Thompson. That excited delirium has fallen out of favor. Almost every medical association says we don't use excited delirium anymore, okay? But that's not to say that there aren't certain symptoms that go along with what they were calling excited delirium back then. And you're gonna hear what those are. You're gonna hear that they were hyper-aggressive behavior, superhuman strength, combative attitudes, bizarre behaviors, unusual pain tolerance, hyperthermia, high body temperature. You're also going to hear that lots of times this excited delirium finding was also associated with drug intoxication. And you're going to hear that Alexander Rios did have a positive urine screen for amphetamines at a level above 1,000 nanograms per milliliter. Yes, you're going to hear that we do not have any confirmative testing on that. You're going to hear why we don't have that. Okay? I wish we did. But you're going to hear that Alexander Rios was expressing a lot of those symptoms of excited delirium. Now, again, these medical associations say don't use excited delirium anymore. We don't want to use that term. We don't want to use it as an umbrella phrase. You're going to hear that the National Association of Medical Examiners in March of this year, 2023, is when they changed their position on excited delirium. You're going to hear that instead of using excited delirium as an umbrella term, they kind of adopt a show your work model. They tell you, instead of just saying excited delirium, explain why it is that this person was in a delirious state. Explain those symptoms. Explain what was going on. But Montgomery County Coroner back in 2019 did make the finding of excited delirium and the finding of accident. Now they made this determination after the physical autopsy, but also after a review of investigative documents, and as Prosecutor Thompson said, after watching that video. That's when they made this determination. Again, their report specifically points out the urine test where his amphetamine levels were over 1,000 nanograms per milliliter. Dr. Paul also points out that she discovered what she describes in her report as a torn or ruptured plastic bag-like object in his stomach. Ladies and gentlemen, this is consistent with somebody who may have swallowed a baggie of drugs. You're going to hear that both Dr. Paul and Dr. Lehman signed the coroner's report, sent it up to Dr. Burwell up here in Richland County, and Dr. Burwell ultimately signed the death certificate showing the cause of death as excited delirium and the manner of death as accident. You're going to hear that the Montgomery County Coroner's report was completed on November 22nd of 2019, and that Dr. Burwell signed the death certificate on November 27th of 2019. Now, you're going to hear that After those things happened, this case basically lay dormant in the hands of BCI and the Special Prosecutor's Office.
Approach, Your Honor.
Yeah, come on up. You may proceed.
Thank you, Judge. So this case was in the hands of BCI and the Special Prosecutor's Office. Now, I believe you're going to hear from Special Agent Lehman, and I think he's going to probably tell you that what he did in his investigation for the 3+ years that this case was in their hands before this indictment was brought. But what you will hear is that at some point in time during that 3+ years, Special Prosecutor Thompson handed this case over to their expert, Dr. Roger Mitchell. Now, Dr. Roger Mitchell, he's a forensic pathologist out of Washington, D.C. You're going to get the opportunity to hear from Dr. Mitchell, and Dr. Mitchell's going to tell you all about his background and experience. Dr. Mitchell's going to tell you he's an advocate. Dr. Mitchell is specifically going to tell you, I believe, that he's an advocate that all cases in which someone dies during an interaction with police should be labeled as a homicide. You're going to hear that on September 5th, 2022, Dr. Mitchell issued a formal report where, unsurprisingly, he called the manner of death a homicide in this case. And you're going to hear all about how he came to those findings. But the bottom line is, what he'll tell you is that without the interaction with law enforcement, Alexander Rios would not have died when he did. And medically, he will call that a homicide. Now, this gets me back to the point that I started with. Whether you believe Dr. Mitchell up there, whether you believe anybody else up there, they're not telling you, Dr. Mitchell's not telling you that this is a homicide, and that automatically means that you all find Mark Cooper back there guilty. That's not what this case is about. Okay? They will tell you, Dr. Mitchell himself will tell you that plenty of times I label something a homicide, but it's not criminal. Homicide for forensic pathology purposes does not equate to criminality. Again, you are going to get the law from the judge. You are going to hear that corrections officers are allowed to use reasonable force in the jail. This was a use of force incident. This was a use of force incident that went tragically wrong. This was not criminal. I've been talking up here for a long time. I'm about to sit down. You all are probably real thankful for that. But you've all been paying close attention to what I'm saying. All I ask for you is to pay the attention that you've been giving me to each and every one of these witnesses, and that you carefully consider the evidence. I think that if you do those two things, you're going to come to one conclusion. And that's that Mark Cooper right there is not guilty of these charges. Thank you.
Thank you, Attorney Boone. Now, ladies and gentlemen, we're ready to hear the actual evidence in the case, which will be the testimony.
Good morning, Dr. Paul.
Good morning.
For the record, could you state your full name, please?
Yes, it's Dr. Amanda Paul.
And you're a medical doctor?
That is correct.
When did you receive your medical doctor training
I just want to say real quick, get ready, because this witness is one of the craziest I have ever seen on the stand.
licensure?
I went to Indiana University School of Medicine from 2004 to 2008. I became a licensed physician at the beginning of my first year of residency. I took an exam and became boarded in the state of Indiana as a physician.
Now, in your capacity, what specialty do you practice in your medical practice?
I work as a forensic pathologist, so I trained in pathology for 3 years. After that, I did do a pediatric pathology fellowship in Cincinnati, and then I went back to Indiana and did my year of forensics after that, and that would have concluded in 2013.
Thank you. Now, let us come forward to 2019. Where were you employed at that time? Particularly September of 2019.
I was working at the Montgomery County Coroner's Office in Dayton, Ohio. Due to a series of unfortunate events, I had never become board certified in forensic pathology and had to go back for another year of training to become eligible to sit for my exhibits again.
Now, Dr. Paul, you've said the unfortunate events. Without probing too deeply, was this something that had to do with some professional ethical issue or drug dependency?
No, not at all. After my forensic fellowship, my son was born, and I was a stay-at-home mom for 2.5 years, and studying cancer cells took a backboard to my beautiful child.
Okay, thank you. So you go about, after your son has matured to a certain level, you go about picking up where you left off, so to speak.
Yeah, I started working again probably in 2017, well, maybe actually 2014 part-time, and then I went back to the Marion County's Coroner's Office in 2017, and then I went over to Dayton from 2019 to 2020 to become re-eligible for the boards.
Okay. Now, at the time when you already testified in September of 2019, you were employed at the Montgomery County Medical Examiner's Office. Is that correct?
It's a coroner's office.
Coroner's office?
Correct.
All right. Who was the supervisor there?
Well, Kent Harshbarger is the in charge of the office.
And who is Dr. Lehman in relationship to your position in 2019?
He was an attending pathologist, so he was one of my teachers.
So he outranked you?
Oh, by far.
Okay, thank you. And what was your formal designation when you served as for lack of a better term, a pathologist for that office?
I was a forensic pathology fellow, so I was clearly a trainee.
Yeah, what does fellow mean so that I understand?
Training, basically.
Okay.
It's I think it's just a remnant of how it was, passed down in medical, like, nephrology. Oh, call the nephrology fellow. He's the guy that, does this, but obviously I'm a lady.
So in your capacity as this pathology fellow, were you able to conduct, strike that. Was your primary responsibility to conduct autopsies?
Yes, conduct autopsies and formulate reports based on those findings.
And in the formulation of those reports, you actually physically conducted the autopsy. Is that right?
That is correct.
And during that time period, prior to September the 27th going into the 28th, how many autopsies had you performed while you were employed in Montgomery County?
I can't answer that. I don't know.
Was it more than 10?
When did I do this autopsy?
September of 2019.
Yeah, it would have been more than 10 because I started July 1st.
Now, when you were doing the autopsy, is there a standard protocol of conduct?
Yeah, I like to do the same thing the same way every time, and that way I don't skip any steps.
Approach your own?
Yeah.
No, I'm
Oh, the witness, sure.
approach the ones.
Sure.
Now, Dr. Paul, I'm handing you what has been previously marked as State's Exhibit 1. Do you recognize that document?
Yes, it looks like a photocopy of the autopsy report that I did on September 19th. Is that correct? for Alexander Rios.
All right. Now, if you would please go to your summary.
Is the summary at the end? I haven't seen this format in a while. I do something different. Or do you mean just the findings at the front page?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
What was the findings, the formal finding as the cause and manner of death as you reported it?
The autopsy report states that the cause of death is excited delirium. The autopsy report does not state a manner of death.
Now, I want to direct your attention, if I may. There are two signatures on that document, or facsimile signatures of that document. Do you recognize one of them?
Yes, one of those is mine.
Do you specifically recall signing this document at the time when it was published?
Not specifically signing the document, no. I remember that it was signed, but I don't remember what I was doing.
As we are here today, do you have specific recollection of conducting the autopsy of Mr. Rios?
Yes.
All right. And is there another signature on that document?
Yes, Dr. Lehman, my supervising physician, co-signed my report.
And have you seen his signature sufficient to be able to recognize it? I mean, he signs...
Not necessarily at this point. If you would have asked me a couple years ago, yeah, I would have said that's his. I mean, I have no reason to doubt that it's not his.
It indicates that's who signed it, right?
Yes.
That's fine. That's fine. Now, during the course of your autopsy, if you would please tell us what kind of preparation, background history, and information gathering do you obtain at the time when you're conducting the autopsy and effectively producing a report on that autopsy? What is helpful information that you seek?
Okay. Well, the truth is the matter, I look for everything. I love that question. What are you looking for? Well, everything. So when we start, I get, variable information. Sometimes stuff comes to light later, but I get what's available to me. I go in, I examine the body. Externally, we will remove any clothing, any medical intervention, and then we do the standard Y, like you would see on television. We examine the internal organs. After we examine everything inside the thoracic and peritoneal cavity, that means chest and abdomen. We'll go ahead and open the head, and then we examine that. After that, we may take tissue samples and look at those under the microscope. Also, we will do toxicology testing if possible. Sometimes if they've been hospitalized for a long time and admission blood is not available, testing them for toxicology after they've been in the hospital really doesn't prove anything about the time of their injury, so we wouldn't do that then. And then, I just review everything that becomes available to me, and then I write it all up in a report, sign it, and we're done.
Thank you. As a part of this incident and your investigation of the circumstances, were you provided a copy of a video?
Yes, I was.
And can you, from your specific recollection, what did that video depict to you? Just generally, what was the incident taking place in that video?
It was the interaction that the decedent had with officers prior to his demise.
It was directly germane, was it not, to the circumstances under which Mr. Rios died?
I'm sorry, what did you say? Directly germane?
Germane, did it?
I don't know that word.
Okay, I'll strike that question. In your recognition, in your experience, did the events that you saw on that video lead to information that was relevant to your report as to the cause of death for Mr. Rios?
Yes.
Okay. Now, I would like you to take a look at that report that you have in front of you, the one that you and Dr. Lehman signed, and if you would please tell me where in that report does it indicate that you watched the video?
It does not indicate that I saw the video in this report.
But you did see the video before you issued the report?
I did see the video.
Before you prepared the report, I should say. Correct?
Well, I mean, I might have started the report before once I knew the man's
Okay.
name, but,
No, that's fair.
you know, but before I finalized the report, yes, I saw the video multiple times.
All right. Did you see that video in your recollection? Did you see that video alone or with other people?
With other people.
Was Dr. Lehman one of those other people?
Yes, we watched it together at one point, at least one time.
Now, we're about to watch that video here in just a moment. But before we do, I would like to ask you one more question about it. Was there ever a conversation that took place between you and Dr. Lehman or you and other individuals there who supervised you regarding inclusion of that video or reference to that video in your report?
Yes, I did ask Dr. Lehman, should I acknowledge in the report somewhere that I had seen this video? And he said, no, do not do that.
Your Honor, at this time, I would like to show that video.
Sure. You have it marked as an exhibit.
I do not. Do we have it marked yet?
It's in there.
Would you
Your
like?
Honor, for reference purposes, if we could identify it as State's Exhibit 3,
Sure.
and then we'll mark it accordingly because it's on a zip drive.
Sure.
Very well.
And there's no objection.
No.
Okay.
Do you plan on stopping this or anything?
No. No.
Do you want audio on or off? Or we don't, is it okay to have the audio on?
It's fine.
Okay.
Dr. Paul, I'm going to ask you to watch the video in its entirety, and then I'll come back and ask you some more questions, okay?
Okay. I mean, I've taken several exams along the way.
Of course.
Get philosophical.
Okay. And so you indicated you've done somewhere around 10 autopsies. As you sit here today in 2023, in order to become board.
I was asked if I performed more than 10 at that point.
Sorry, I apologize. I hit play on another video. So I had mentioned before that this was a local station. So when they started playing the video, they cut out. And now that they're back in, this is switched to cross-examination. They will show the video later on, but they didn't show it at this point in time. So I will give you a warning before the video plays in case anybody wants to turn it off. But this is the cross-examination.
Certified, you would still need to pass that first test.
Yes. I felt very uncomfortable in Dayton prior to this. I will be honest with you, because of my sexual orientation, I felt very discriminated against. I was already on very thin ice in Dayton, and I didn't want to make any more waves. And that's one of the reasons why I went ahead and signed something that I don't agree to.
Okay. Well, we'll get to that. I'm just interested in kind of getting a little bit more of your background. And so, based on the passage of time and missing some deadlines, you ended up in Montgomery County in order to kind of complete some training that you'd already
Yeah, I
completed.
needed 1 year of training to be eligible to sit for the boards. Is that established? Do we understand that as a jury? Okay, I think we've got it. Let's go on.
You're asking me to move along?
Yes, please. I know. I'd like to get out of here. I have to do Halloween with my children in Central Indiana.
And listen, I think everybody's probably sensitive to that, okay?
Okay, let's. Thank you.
But it is an important task that you have here today, isn't it?
It is. And I'm very emotionally distraught. So let's just do it. And I'm trying to be calm, please.
Okay, all right. So, with respect to the structure, okay, you
Yes.
indicated that you were essentially a student back in 2019, right?
A trainee.
Trainees have supervisors and/or teachers, correct?
Yes.
In the context of the Montgomery County Coroner's Office, when you're performing or conducting an autopsy as a trainee, who is the supervisor or the teacher?
Whoever's on rotation that week. So the week that September 19th occurred, it would have been Dr. Lehman. So any exams I did that week, he would be my supervisor.
When you look at the opinion page that was the subject of your testimony, at least some of it earlier today, you are listed as Amanda Paul, MD, right?
Yes.
He is listed as Lee Lehman. What are his titles?
It looks like he has a PhD and an MD.
Okay. And he also has a title below that, correct?
Oh, he's a chief deputy coroner. So he would be under Dr. Harshbarger, who would be the chief coroner, or the elected coroner. I suppose.
Okay. And then below him, like his Number one, like a first assistant would be the chief deputy.
I don't know the entire organizational flow chart, and I'm not going to testify to that.
How many other chief deputies were you aware of there at the time?
I'm not sure who has that title.
Okay. Except for, you know, Dr. Lehman does.
Yeah, by looking at this, I know that. I would not have been able to recall that prior to having that pointed out to me.
Okay. So, if I understand generally back then, you are in the autopsy room. You indicated you've done somewhere around 10 autopsies or so by the time you
No,
conducted?
not doctor. I was asked if I had performed more than 10 at that
Yeah.
point, and I said yes.
Okay.
But at that point in my career, I probably performed over 1,000.
So you were asked about 10.
He asked how many I had performed at Montgomery County.
Okay.
I said, I don't know. He said, do you think it was more than 10? And I said, yes, it was definitely more than 10.
Okay. And each time that you conducted or performed one of those autopsies in Montgomery County, it followed the same protocol, correct?
Yes.
And can you describe that protocol? Not the actual hands-on, the examination, but who's in the room typically? How does the supervisory component
Okay,
work?
so I get the case assignment. I go into the morgue. Usually they're at Montgomery County. They have 2 or 3 assistants, and there is a supervising physician that comes in. Now, like I said, at this point in my career, I've done over 1,000 autopsies, so my supervision wasn't as hawk-like in the beginning as if I was a newbie coming into it.
So in some ways, you would kind of build up some credibility or chops with respect to performing the autopsies based on all the ones you've done in the past, right?
Yeah, I would say I was potentially their most qualified fellow that they've ever had.
Okay. And so you mentioned there's some assistant type persons in the room. Are they helping you in performing or conducting the autopsy? They're referenced, don't they?
Yeah, I have under attendance, there was a photographer there who takes photos. Then we had autopsy assistants, James Johnson, Cody Miller, and Michelle Welch.
Now, this document appears to be prepared using a type of application. It's called Dragon Dictation Software. Do you know what that is?
Yes, it's just dictation software.
Okay. And so is it you dictating?
Yes.
All right. And so how does that, so you are dictating in real time as you are conducting your examination, correct?
Not at all.
Tell us how it works.
I do my examination and I have notes or papers, and then I take those papers into my office and then I compose that on my computer once I'm sitting down at my desk. It's not like on TV when you see it, when they just start dictating the air. That's just TV.
Okay. All right. And so ultimately, this document is the end result of you looking at your notes and reviewing everything that you do in the autopsy and then making your findings, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. So you had an opportunity to take a look at what I think is labeled as what, State's Exhibit
3.
3? Did you look at it?
1, sorry.
State's Exhibit 1. Is it a fair and accurate depiction of your report that you created back in September through November of 2019?
Yes, it is.
Okay, and that's true of each and every page?
I'm sorry, I can't hear that. It says it's a true and exact copy of the original. I have no reason to doubt that. I can't recall if every word on every page is the same.
All right. Well, I would like to kind of go through some of the report with you and talk about some of your findings, okay? So you indicated, and it's clear from the report, that you completed or performed this autopsy on September 30th, 2019, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And you indicated a number of assistants that were present in the room. You also indicate that present in the room was Richland County Coroner's Office Investigator Bob Ball.
Yes.
And there was also a police detective that you know being at the autopsy as well.
Yes.
Detective Ryan Radoshek from the Richland County Sheriff's Department.
Yes.
We've come to understand that there was a special agent for BCI, Rodriguez, that was also in the room for part of the exam. Do you recall that?
I do not recall that at all.
Okay. Are you saying he was not there, or you just can't recall?
I definitely can't recall. I am definitely not saying he was not there. The only reason I would have any idea that these people are here is because they are documented in the report. There's a sign-in sheet that people sign. So this person who we're referencing apparently did not sign in, because otherwise they would have been included in the report.
Okay. With respect to the initial external exam, we learned that he was 28 years old at the time of his passing, correct? It's on page 2 there, right at the top.
Okay, yes,
You described him as a white male identified as Alexander Rios, correct?
correct.
External examination, customary to weigh the deceased.
Yes,
He weighed 194 pounds and was 70 inches in length, is that correct?
that's how it's documented, yes.
And that would be 70 inches, what is that, 5'10"?
Yes,
You described him as being well-developed and well-nourished.
yes,
You don't always make that documentation. Sometimes you see indications of malnourished and other sorts of things, and if you saw that, you would document it there, right?
that is correct.
By all accounts, this is a relatively fit-seeming individual.
Yes,
Okay. Next, during the external examination, you make some findings regarding what appear to be the eyes to me. Directing your attention to paragraph 2 in the external examination,
yes,
you indicate that the sclera and the conjunctivi are unremarkable. Can you tell the jury what that means?
the sclera are the white of your eyes, and the conjunctiva is the pink part on the inside of the lid when you flip it up, flip it down.
You go on to indicate that the eyes are free of petechiae.
Yeah, petechiae are a non-specific finding that happen when capillaries burst.
Okay. And Mr. Rios did not have petechiae.
He did not.
Petechiae are relevant in an autopsy. Under what circumstances?
They're a non-specific finding that we just document if it's there or not. It can be seen in cases of asphyxia, often related to compression of neck vessels.
Okay. The kind of thing that was being described in the video by Mr. Thompson when he was questioning you, correct?
Well, I guess we are going to go into different kinds of asphyxia. There is mechanical asphyxia, where
Yes.
the chest can't compress.
Sure.
And then there's also, manual or ligature strangulation, or such as hanging. And so the petechiae form in the eyes when you compress. It takes less effort to compress a vein that returns blood to the heart than it does to compress an artery. So if you apply some force to the neck vessels, it's minimal, like 6 pounds. You can include the jugular. And the head weighs about 10 pounds. So it's a myth that you have to be suspended. You can just have weight like this and be able to asphyxiate yourself. But anyway, the arterial blood is allowed to flow. The venous blood cannot return, and then the capillaries burst. So that's a different type of asphyxia, because the blood's a closed loop system.
Okay. But to be sure, evidence of petechiae, generally speaking, can be evidence of asphyxiation, yes?
Not at all. It's a very non-specific finding that's seen in several other types of things. It does not indicate asphyxia at all. It's seen in asphyxia, but it doesn't indicate asphyxia.
So when you say indicate, you mean what?
It doesn't prove it. There's no proof of asphyxia.
Not one way or the other, but
Right.
it's relevant to the determination.
It's relevant, correct.
Sure.
It's something we note. We
Okay.
just note what's there.
Okay.
Like I said, I look for everything.
Right. And in this case, you saw no petechiae, and the eyes were otherwise unremarkable, correct?
Correct.
You also did an examination of the mouth. It appears you made a finding that the tongue appears normal.
Yes.
And in order to take a look at the tongue, you would have had to look around in there, right?
Yes.
And you noted nothing of consequence with respect to anything as to
Right.
why he died, right?
Right.
Okay. With respect to evidence of injury on page 3, I'd like to draw attention to that.
Okay.
This is obviously a very important section, typically, in an autopsy, correct?
Yes.
Tell us why.
Well, like I said, we look for everything. If there is significant injury, then that's something that is significant. If there's no injury, then it's important to note that too, just to document that there's no injury.
If someone suffers a gunshot wound and you believe that's the cause of death,
Then
evidence of injury, you have all sorts of description about the gunshot wound itself, right?
that's correct.
And it would appear in this section.
That's correct.
Path of the bullet, damage it did along the way to all the different organs, right?
Yes,
Objection,
but-
relevance.
Yeah, this scene, I was just about to say, doesn't have a gunshot wound.
No, there's an objection.
It's just for the purpose of helping them
Yeah,
understand.
overruled at this point if you, but I get that we can't go too far afield.
For sure. So getting right to it, with your examination of Mr. Rios, the evidence of injury that you noted was a .25 or a quarter-inch abrasion on the right side of his lower lip, right?
Yes.
You also identified a half-inch linear abrasion on his left flank. What is the
Yes.
left flank?
That's the side of the body.
Okay. And you, for the record, are motioning down here just above your hip, I think.
Yeah, kind
On
of
the left
between
side.
the rib cage and the hip.
Okay. And the abrasion was a half-inch dried abrasion, so about like this guy here.
Yeah,
Okay. And then a quarter-inch dried abrasion on the dorsum of his right foot.
right.
Okay. So that we understand, your definition of an abrasion is what?
Abrasion is what lay people would call a scrape. I would call what you guys would probably call a cut. I would call a laceration, and a bruise would be a contusion.
Right. Okay. Talk about having kids. Kids out running around outside, takes a fall, comes in, with a little scrape on the knee. That's
Yep.
abrasion, right?
Yeah,
Okay. None of these injuries that you identified, and those are the three that you identified, correct?
I think I have 4. I have one on the lip, one on the flank, one on the knee, and one on the foot.
You did, 4. Quarter
But
inch,
none of those are fatal.
Right.
They're just little scrapes, tiny scrapes.
but it goes to show that you're thorough and you're looking for everything.
Yep.
You examined the respiratory system.
Yes.
You weighed the lungs.
Yes.
You weighed one lung at 1,050 grams and 885 grams respectively. Yes?
Yes.
Ultimately, in your opinion page 1, you talk about pulmonary edema with a combined lung weight of 1,935 grams. Tell us about that.
Pulmonary edema is another non-specific finding. It's just heavy fluid, a lot of extra fluid on the lungs. And like I said, it's non-specific. We can see it in cardiac deaths, we can see it in overdose deaths. A lot of times we see it on people who have been on the vent, like this guy. He was hospitalized 7 days.
Okay. So the 3 things you mentioned are cardiac deaths, overdose deaths, and...
Yeah, and those are just a few examples. I'm not going to give an exhaustive list.
It's fine. You examined his neck, correct?
Yes.
And you indicated that there were no abnormalities, right?
That's correct.
Specifically, you indicate that the hyoid bone was intact and that the larynx were intact, correct?
Yes.
All right. Not uncommon in compression or strangulation cases, pressure on the neck, that you could have damage to those structures, correct?
In cases of manual strangulation, it can happen. The hyoid bone is right up here, and so it can get broken with force right up to that area.
And that
And the
can-
larynx is here, and so pressure to the anterior neck can cause hemorrhage in that area as well.
Both of those can almost certainly be fatal, yes?
If the force is there long enough.
Sure. You also examined the strap muscles of the neck.
Yes.
Where are those?
The strap muscles, like for instance, this is the sternocleidomastoid. You can see mine pops out
I
really
can't,
well.
even from here.
And then there's a couple other layers underneath there too.
Okay. And you examined those as well?
Yes.
No abnormalities?
No.
All right. Now, ultimately, after completing the examination, you went to the work. I would assume just looking at it, September 30th, 2019 is the date of the autopsy. You started and finished it on that day, correct?
Was it 30th? I thought we were saying the 18th.
I don't think it
I'm
was
not
the
even
18th.
sure.
You're fine, go look. Take a look.
Oh, no, it was the 19th. I don't know where I got 18th. I'm sorry, 30th. I'm looking at 2019.
okay.
September 30th, 2019.
And then it's November 22nd when you ultimately signed your opinion, correct?
Yes,
Okay. And it was during that time that you were putting together all of your notes?
yes, between those and then in addition to my other cases and my normal
In
ones that I left.
other words, the passage of time there between completing the autopsy and the finalizing of the report is just a function of your schedule and other cases and things of that nature, correct?
Right, we wait for, histology to come back. Because I was a trainee, I did look at tissue under every case, just stuck under the microscope, just as a checklist for the ACGME.
Okay. And you also have to wait for like toxicology to come back to you.
Generally,
Okay.
but toxicology was not done on this decedent, if I recall, because he was hospitalized for 7 days and we didn't have the admission flag. But in general, yes, we do wait for toxicology.
Do you have at the back end of the report the toxicology?
Oh, I guess I do.
I think it's a 2-page lab report.
Is it just?
I think it confirms hospital
Oh.
medications. and
Oh,
so forth.
shoot, we did do it. See, I'm not used to this format. I don't like how they do, I do a different format. I don't know why that's not in the front page. Anyway, yeah, let's see. Presumptive ID of levetiracetam, which is an anti-epileptic drug or seizure medication. Let's see, what does it say? Which type of blood was taken? Okay, so it looks like we have heart blood and peripheral blood. So we were testing the blood from the man who he'd already been in the hospital like 7 weeks. So he's got IV fluids, all sorts of stuff. Lorazepam, midazolam, those are benzodiazepines. Those also have anti-seizure properties that help calm you down. Fentanyl, that's a pain medication. I'm sure you guys have heard of fentanyl. It's a pain medication that is prescribed to people and can be used appropriately.
Carefully, right?
Can be. And then lacosamide, which I'm not 100% sure what that one is off the top of my head. Not one that kills you.
I think we're all in agreement that those appear to be medications that were administered during
Yes, those were
7
medications that he
days.
was given apparently during, I don't even know why we tested it. That was kind of pointless.
Okay. So now, getting back to your actual opinion. So if you could refer to page 1 there of State's Exhibit number 1. Okay. So you have indicated that you talked about, you asked about including that you had watched the video in your report.
That's correct.
And Dr. Lehman, as your supervisor, indicated that you didn't need to do that.
Yeah, he said don't do that.
Don't do that, okay. Can you show me anywhere else in your report where you talk about any of the materials that you reviewed? That were not available to you in the autopsy room? Did you review any other materials?
Well, I do say per available medical records for the urinary drug screen positive for hospital admission, so that's.
Were you informed of that, or did you review all the medical records front to back in this case?
I reviewed the available medical records that were made available to me.
Okay.
And I don't know, state laws are different. I don't know how much Ohio retains. I know in Indiana we do.
All right. And so, the very first sentence that you write is Roman numeral number 1, correct?
Yes.
And what you describe is a sudden collapse following an excited state and physical altercation with law enforcement, correct?
Yes.
And so, whether you put in there that you watched the video or you didn't as part of your review, you did, correct? Watch the video?
I did watch the video
You
before
you
composing
wa-
my report.
you watched the video multiple times, yes?
Well, I don't know how many times I watched the video before composing my report, but I've watched it since then.
Okay. And what you see on the video is an excited state and a physical altercation with law enforcement, correct?
Yes.
And so, whether you put in there that you watched the video or you didn't, you're clearly putting in your report the relevant interaction preceding Mr. Rios' death, which would be the excited state and the physical altercation with law enforcement, correct?
Sure.
No one instructed you not to put in there that there was a physical altercation with law enforcement, did they?
No.
Okay. Now, moving on to right beneath that, I guess what would be Roman numeral 1A, and then followed by B, the B1, 2, and 3, appear to be things that were relevant that you learned while conducting the autopsy, and also reviewing, I guess, the medical records that were available to you that were relevant to your opinion as to the cause of death in this case back in 2019, correct?
Well, I just want to say that you keep saying your opinion, and even though my name is signed, it was not my opinion that excited delirium was the cause of death.
I know, I heard you say that, but
Okay, well, I just, the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, and it's not my opinion.
Okay.
So when I answer my question, I want to be clear that it's not my opinion.
could you take a
The
look?
objection's overruled, by the way. Go ahead.
Thank you. Can you take a look? We'll just get right down to there. Middle, bottom third of the page, in bold letters, it says opinion, correct?
Yes.
Can you read what it says directly below opinion?
It is my opinion that the cause of death of Alexander Rios is excited delirium. And the whole truth is, I signed my name.
Ma'am, I asked you to read that, and then I'm going to ask you a question. Okay.
Your Honor, I'm supposed to tell the whole truth.
You'll have an opportunity
Okay.
to
Okay.
clear up.
Okay,
Okay.
let's go on.
So what you write is, it is my opinion that the cause of death of Alexander Rios is excited delirium. That's what you wrote, correct? Yes or no?
That's what is written here.
And the first name that appears beneath the line, it is my opinion, is Amanda Paul, forensic pathologist, and that is your signature, correct?
And I was so conflicted about this, and that's something that has given me stress and anxiety for years, because I don't think that's what happened. And I feel like there is a lot, I don't agree with it, and I was very conflicted. Like I said, I was in a very precocious situation, and I felt that there was no choice. I wanted to get my time done, I wanted to spend my year there, get my training, and get out of there.
Okay, ma'am. Doctor, I want to get back to what you wrote and what's on this page,
Yes.
okay? And then I'm sure you'll have an opportunity to talk about that. Right? Moving back up.
Yes,
Sudden collapse following excited state and physical altercation with law enforcement. That's what you wrote as the precipitating event, correct?
yes,
Okay. A, torn, parenthesis, ruptured plastic bag-like object in the stomach.
yes.
You wrote that, correct?
Yes.
And what you're talking about there is the ruptured plastic bag-like object that you found while conducting the autopsy of Mr. Rios in his stomach, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And that was significant enough to you that after you indicate the precipitating event, that is letter A that you wrote when you sat down and wrote your report, correct?
Yes,
Letter B is status post-medical intervention. He was hospitalized 7 days, right?
yes,
And number 1, under post-medical intervention while at the hospital, is urinary drug screen positive for amphetamines following hospital admission per available medical records, correct?
correct.
And so what you're doing is you are listing as letter A. First thing we see is the ruptured plastic bag, and under B1 at the hospital, the first item you list is the positive for amphetamines at the hospital, correct?
Yes,
The obvious connection there is the presumptive positive for amphetamines at the hospital and the bag that you find in his stomach, and making the connection that he was under the influence of drugs, correct?
that is certainly a possibility, but it's not a direct conclusion that I can draw. I've learned since then, apparently he was prescribed amphetamine for ADHD.
Jack asked to approach.
Okay.
Ladies and gentlemen, the parties have stipulated or in agreement that Mr. Rios did not have a prescription for amphetamine. And so information that Dr. Paul had as to that appears to be incorrect, and so disregard her statement as to she received that information, because the state and defense agree that he did not have a prescription for amphetamine when all this occurred.
I'm sorry, that was my mistake. I thought that that's what I had been told.
Well, I'm going to ask you a question.
Yes.
You think you can stick to what you know for me?
I know I was told
It's a question.
that. I know I was told
Excuse me.
that. I'm sorry that that was incorrect.
Okay? Yes?
I'm going to object to the argumentative nature of this, and
And I'm sorry, Mike.
there's no reason,
Okay.
there's no reason to approach this witness in this manner.
It is cross-examination,
Yes,
so
sure.
I understand the nature of cross-examination. I think she answered it, so I think we can move on. We're trying to move along here.
For purposes of questions going forward, though, I am going to ask for directly, or that the witness be advised,
Yeah.
not to speculate on what she started. I'm not asking her questions about what she heard, I'm asking her about what she did.
Yeah, Dr. Paul, one thing is, this is true for every witness, you can only testify about what you have personal knowledge about. So it's something someone told you or you heard would be considered like a hearsay statement. So just go with what you personally know from your examination. And that may
Well, then, I mean, I know that this man had a pretty normal body. Nothing was physically wrong with him. What else do we need to talk about? Let's go, please. I want to get home to my kids.
I know you do. I do too. Okay.
I'm going through a divorce, and this is my first Halloween with them. And I have to go to Central Indiana. It's almost 2 o'clock. Please.
Well, we're doing the best we can.
Then let's
I'm not
go.
asking for a break. I'm gonna keep going. Are you good?
Yeah, please go.
Did you get super charged up over the lunch hour?
No, please ask your next question.
All right, I'm going to. All right, so getting back to it, with the information that was available to you, when you wrote this report at your desk, you listed the ruptured plastic bag in conjunction with the presumptive positive amphetamine from the hospital, yes?
Yes.
And that was relevant to you as a potential cause of death as it related to symptoms associated with excited delirium, correct?
I don't believe in excited delirium.
Except for, you take an oath, right? As a
Right.
medical doctor, do you take an
I will
oath?
object. This has been asked and answered now twice.
Well, let me hear the question before, let me hear the question.
As a medical doctor, just like lawyers, you take an oath, correct?
Yes.
I don't think that was asking answered, so.
And that oath requires you to make findings based on what you believe to be the case, right?
Yes. I mean, well, no, I don't know. What is the oath? Because I don't think that's part of it. I think it's an oath is to do no harm. I don't know where it says to make a diagnosis. I don't think Hippocrates said that.
All right. Well, do you take your responsibility serious when you're putting your name on a line like that? Making
Yeah, I've already discussed to the jury that I reached out to colleagues. I said, what do I do? And they said, I'm in this precarious, I don't know what to do. They said, just sign your name, and when the time comes, if it ever goes to court, just say you're not available. Because I knew it would come to, well, doctor, why did you sign your name if you didn't agree with it? I was concerned about that before I put my name on this line. I felt I had no choice. I did what I had to do. I don't agree with it. It's been asked and answered. Can we move on to the next point, please?
Anoxic encephalopathy,
Yes.
lack of oxygen to the brain, right?
Correct.
That could be caused by a number of different things, correct?
Correct.
One of them is the use of toxic drugs, right?
Being in a comatose state for a week is the more likely cause of his anoxic encephalopathy rather than the effect of the drugs.
Okay. But getting back to my question, because as we know, there are a number of potential different causes for these things, right? Already established that as it relates to some of the other things we've talked about. One potential cause of anoxic encephalopathy is, in fact, drug overdose or toxicity with respect to drugs, correct?
That is correct.
Now, you know that a positive, presumptive positive in a hospital is going to involve a threshold amount, right?
Yes.
And in this case, you know that the threshold associated with the presumptive positive from reviewing those records is greater than 1,000 nanograms per milliliter, right?
You're making assumptions about what I know or don't know. I would have to look at the paper. I don't know that off the top of my head.
Well, you were thorough when you reviewed the medical records when you were putting these things on paper, weren't you?
Yes, but I don't recall threshold levels for every medication.
Okay. Or illicit drug, right?
Right.
Okay. But you would agree that there are thresholds that you have to be above in order to have a presumptive positive in a hospital setting.
We're going to talk about things I know, so this seems like questions for toxicologists and not forensic pathologists.
So you're just not familiar?
I'm familiar with it, but it's not my area of expertise. I'm here as a fact witness as to what I did. I reviewed the medical records and I documented that the urinary drug screen was positive. A screening test is just that, a screening test. It doesn't confirm anything.
Can you show us anything in your report
No.
as to your findings that would support any explanation of death other than excited delirium? Your findings.
I'm not sure I understand the question. There are no findings for excited delirium because it's not a thing.
Okay, well, let's talk about that. It was in 2019, correct?
It's a relic of the past, and it's something that I don't really have. It's a pseudo-scientific relic of the past, in my opinion.
Do you belong to any professional organizations?
No, I do not.
Do you belong to the National Association of Medical Examiners, primary medical organization?
I just answered that I do not belong to any associations.
Are
and
you
that would
aware that it
include me.
wasn't until March 2023?
Objection, relevance, it's outside her scope, she said she's not a member.
Well,
It-
she's talking about it as a relevant past.
All right,
It is in March of 2023
Objection.
that they did.
hold on, everybody. hold on.
Sorry.
No one? talk.
Sorry.
I think if she's not a member of that organization, I don't know if you have knowledge of it. So I think based on that, I would sustain.
Okay. Well, what do you know happened in March 2023 with respect to the use of excited delirium?
NAME finally stepped up and put a position paper out that said not to use excited delirium as a cause of death, as there's no corresponding ICD-10 code or WHO diagnosis because it's not a thing.
That's almost verbatim what it says, isn't it?
I don't know. Why don't you read it out loud and see how close I am?
But it goes on to say, instead, NAME endorses that the underlying cause for the delirious state be determined, if possible, and used for cause of death or death certification.
Your Honor, excuse me, I apologize. Mr. Mayor is trying to get through the back door, but he couldn't bring through the front. He's talking about, now he's testifying about the contents of a report she's already stated she doesn't know anything about.
Well, I think she indicated.
He's reading from the report.
I get it.
It's not a report.
It's a
Well,
statement.
It's a statement. I think she asked me how close she was on reading that, and so I think.
Yeah,
in
I
response to
literally
her
repeated
question-
This is cross-examination, it's not dialogue.
I get it. You can ask your next question. I overruled it.
Okay, so you have indicated correctly that in March of 2023, NAME indicates that excited delirium are not endorsed or recognized in renewed classifications. That's accurate, correct?
That's accurate.
But you also know that they go on to say that they endorse identifying the underlying cause of the delirium and just using that as the underlying causes of death
If
without
you know.
saying excited delirium. Isn't that
Only
true?
if you know that.
Isn't that true?
If you know, excuse me, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
If you know.
I mean, I did. I read that, during the lunch break. I looked it up and read it.
Me too.
Yeah.
I know, isn't it great? No, we've known about this for a while.
Yeah, and I've known about that for a while too. Today wasn't my first
And
time.
so it would be a bit inaccurate to say that excited delirium is no longer a thing when you consider that you can still list
Your Honor,
the circumstances that cause the delirious state and have those as the cause of death, correct?
Your Honor, I'm going to object once again. Now he's asking her to make a conclusion.
Well, she can do it.
She just said she's not a member of the organization.
I get it.
She read it over the article. He's now asking
Let me-
her to make a conclusion that that's not accurate.
Well, can you answer the question without making a conclusion, or does it require you to make it?
Well,
Attorney Mayor, maybe could you rephrase your question without asking her to make a conclusion?
Yes. You are aware, right, that the group that you've talked about, the National Association of Medical Examiners, in March of 23, no longer endorse excited delirium as a cause of death, correct?
correct.
But you are also aware, based on having read the statement before we came in here, that NAME does endorse that the underlying cause for the delirious state be determined and used for death certification.
I
You're aware of
think
that,
I've
correct?
said yes like 8 times to that question.
So, because we're not going to use excited delirium here in 2023, right, it means we were allowed to use it back in 2019 as a...
Now he's asking for a legal conclusion.
No, it would be a medical conclusion.
It's her conclusion.
So ask it as.
It was Dr. Lehman's conclusion.
Okay.
Some doctors continued to use it, in my opinion, mistakenly.
Okay. So what you knew then and what you know now about excited delirium are that it presents with several different types of characterizations or symptoms, correct? You're aware of that, right?
I haven't read about excited delirium. I can't really talk about it right now. I just don't believe that it is a real phenomenon.
You know what delirium is, yes?
I do know what delirium is, but I don't necessarily hold to the belief of excited delirium
We
as the
understand.
cause of death.
Okay. But you know what delirium is, correct?
Yes.
And you know that people that present with delirium present with sudden onset of bizarre and or aggressive behavior, correct? Yes?
Potentially.
Agitation, yes?
Potentially.
Paranoia, yes?
I don't know about that one.
Violence potentially toward others?
Potentially.
Unexplained physical strength?
I don't know if that's related. That's what they talk about in excited delirium. I don't know. I'm talking about just straight up delirium.
Hyperthermia?
That can be a thing, yeah.
And it's usually precipitated or brought on by stimulant drug use, correct?
That is the definition of excited delirium.
Okay. And so if I understand the way that we're to deal with excited delirium now, if someone previously was determined to have been a cause of death excited delirium, say in 2021, in 2023, after March of 2023, NAME would simply say, list all of those criteria without saying excited delirium. Fair?
I don't know. Like I said, like we've established, I'm not a member of NAME, so I don't know what they would say to exactly. We talked about that, but
And that is the leading organization in your field, correct?
it is, yes.
Okay. All right, so well, it's not easy,
Okay.
you know.
I'm stressed out too.
All right.
We're going as fast as we can.
I know.
I'll ask
It's-
for one
okay,
more, please.
okay, please.
Go ahead. With respect to amphetamines that he would have had on board at the time, without a confirmatory test, we simply can't get at levels. Is that fair as far as?
Urinary levels don't really mean anything because it's just indicative of past use. The more relevant levels would be blood, but in the hospital they generally don't use blood for toxicology. They just use a urinary drug screen. But in forensics, we test the blood because that's what's relevant to us.
Okay, but in the hospital setting, they collect the urine, they see what's in your urine so they can figure out what medications they can give you safely or not, right?
Well, I don't think that's exactly why they do it. They try and see what you've already taken. The urinary drug screen is to see what drugs are in your system.
As it relates to what might be reasonable to medications to give you, right?
I'm not that kind of
She's not a
doctor.
medical doctor. She's not.
I am a medical doctor. I'm just not that
She's
kind of
not an
doctor.
emergency room medical
Hold
doctor.
on,
My
not everybody,
apologies.
obviously the court reporter's trying to take this down. Court reporter cannot take
She's-
down multiple people talking. I get your objection. I think you were asking her as a medical doctor.
Yes.
Not as, so I think it's okay because she is a medical doctor and so she can answer that question. So if you can.
The question was phrased, Your Honor, if I may, for the record, the question was phrased so that she was going to be asked to answer a question about what ER doctors would do effectively on initial admission to make a determination about what is in a person's system.
And only if she's able to offer that kind of, if she has that kind of knowledge. So again, if you have knowledge of that, then you can answer. If you don't know, then just say you don't know.
Yeah, I don't know.
Okay. Well, it's also relevant what's in your system as to what may be going on with your body when you're in distress, right?
Yeah, that's why they want to know what's in your system.
Right. Concerns perhaps
Yeah,
for
so
drug
they know what
overdose,
they're
right?
dealing with. So they know what they're dealing with. It's not necessarily so they know what drugs that it would interact with. That was what my impression I was getting that you were asking me. It's so that they know what's going on with the body. It's not having
Right.
to relate to.
Because people do present to the ER in distress, right?
Yes.
And sometimes they can't speak, right? Can't self-report what's in their system, right?
Right.
And so having that urinary test lets you know what's in their system and at least in threshold amounts, right?
Well, we would never believe what somebody told us. We would still test the urine. They would still test the urine.
Because people can lie, right?
People lie,
Especially about drug use, right?
especially about drug use.
Okay. All right. I want to talk specifically about just a couple more things, okay?
Okay.
Kind of round third, heading home, if you will.
Please.
All right. So, in the room where it happened, the autopsy, right? You talked about who was there, right? And you are communicating with your assistants and probably with Dr. Lehman as he's in and out of the room, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And isn't it true that during the time you were performing and conducting the autopsy, you spoke aloud, out loud, about excited delirium as a concern for Mr. Rios?
Did you
I have
recall?
no idea. I don't recall doing that during the time of the autopsy. I mean, this was over 3 years ago.
But you feel so strongly about it now, you would think you would remember, right?
No, I don't even remember what I had for breakfast. I have ADHD. I only remember certain parts of things. You know, things that stick out.
Certainly there were people in the room that were paying attention to what you were doing during the autopsy, correct?
Yes.
And those included some law enforcement types, right?
Yeah, I have, 2 documented that were, the coroner's office and the detective or who signed in.
Certainly not uncommon for them to be paying attention to what the doctor is saying about the autopsy in your experience, right?
Your Honor, this is pure speculation.
She knows.
Well, if that's customary in your practice.
I don't know. I mean, sometimes they just sit there and scroll on their phone too.
Can they ask you questions?
Yeah, they have the chance to ask us questions.
And that happens, right?
I mean, it sometimes happens, yeah.
And you'll answer to the best ability if it's not something where you can't because you're otherwise engaged,
I
right?
mean, I'm always honest.
Sure. All right. And what you're saying is you can't recall speaking out loud about excited delirium during the time you were conducting the Rios autopsy. Can't recall that.
No, I can't recall doing that during the time of the autopsy.
Not denying it.
It is possible. I just don't recall if it happened or not during the time of the autopsy. It takes a course over an hour or 2.
Now, we know Dr. Lehman was in and out of the autopsy room in supervisor capacity, correct?
Yeah, I assume so. I don't know how often he was in or out. I don't recall any of that.
There was never an argument or a disagreement that took place between the two of you that anyone would have witnessed in the autopsy room over this excited delirium, correct?
No, like I said, I don't recall talking about excited delirium at the time of the autopsy exam. And we certainly did not, if we had fought over the use of the term excited delirium at the time of the exam, I am fairly certain that that would stand out to me. But as you said, we should just talk about what I know.
Okay. And so any discussion that occurred with respect to the cause of death occurred in these roundtable discussions that you talked about?
Yeah, afterwards.
Okay, and who would have been in those rooms?
The attendings, the other staff at the Montgomery, the other physicians at the Montgomery County Coroner's Office.
Okay.
And I
so-
also consulted with physicians at the Marion County Coroner's Office who all disagreed with the cause of death, excited delirium.
And so did you file anything with any organizations or with the board on Dr. Harshbarger or Dr. Lehman with respect to their determination, or ultimately Dr. Lehman's call?
No, I did not.
Okay. Were there arguments between you and Dr. Lehman?
I mean, it wasn't a heated argument. I did present an alternate diagnosis, and I felt it was very well supported, and he just said, no, just use excited delirium.
All right. And so there is nothing where the two of you were arguing or you were reprimanded or...
No,
Right.
no, we did not. I got along with Dr. Lehman very well, generally.
And so in the end, he essentially is the teacher and the supervisor and the chief deputy coroner, correct?
Yes.
And so you put together the report and then have the discussion with him, and then you either sign your name or you don't, right?
Correct.
And in this case, you signed your name indicating that your opinion on November 22nd, 2019 was excited delirium. Yes or no?
I signed the document saying that it was my opinion. I did do that. I wasn't under threat of perjury at that time, though. It was just, I was going along with my attending physician.
This was in November of 2019.
Okay.
You're here today
Yes.
in 2023, right?
Yes.
Not October 31st, 2023.
Okay.
At any point in time, did this gentleman from BCI or any other investigators from BCI get in contact with you to discuss your opinion and ask you questions about whether you stood by that or not?
I was called by an attorney. I don't know
When?
if I specifically spoke to anybody from BCI. I know there was a conversation with 2 people.
Yeah, and that occurred like a couple of days ago, right?
Yeah.
Okay. What I'm asking you, in the 4 years prior to that, at any point in time, did a detective type get in touch with you and say, hey, we want to sit down and have an interview and discuss your findings with you? Did that ever happen?
I think that I might have gotten a subpoena at one point a couple years ago. And
I'm
then-
asking you if a detective ever got in touch with you
No, I don't recall that.
and you indicated you were conflicted about this, you were upset about this, and all of these different things. Was there ever a point in time, instead of waiting for them to come find you, if you just picked up the phone and said, I'm going to make some calls and see if someone will talk to me? Did that ever happen? Yes or no?
I thought about it, but I never did do that. I didn't know what to do.
And in the end, as you take a look at that video, as you have several times in the past before signing your name to that report, you look at the findings that you actually did make. Understanding that today you could not call it excited delirium, okay, at least that's the directive. Certainly there's evidence of delirium, yes? Based on your findings and also what you see on that video.
Potentially, I don't think he demonstrated superhuman strength. I think he was just acting crazy.
Were you in the pile?
Objection. Oh, it's sustained.
No.
Certainly appears agitated, yes? Certainly appears
Oh, I
agitated.
don't know what that means.
Certainly
Okay.
appears agitated, right? Certainly appears physically aggressive, correct?
I don't know. He ran out the room and then was tackled, as far as I saw.
He burst out of his jail cell.
He ran out of the room.
Objection, Your Honor. The video speaks for itself.
Yeah.
I mean, it's.
I think so. So I'll sustain.
One moment, please. That's all I have for you at this point. Thank you.
Okay.
Hang on, Prosecutor Thompson, any questions at all?
A moment. Paul, very, very quickly.
Yes.
Is there, Mr. Mayor went to great extent to ask you about the indicia of the dementia and all those other things that you observed. Is there anything in their medical records on your report about the body temperature from the medical records?
I did not document that. And that was the question asked, if there's anything in my
So there's nothing in your record, there's nothing in your report.
to document hyperthermia, so there is no
Well,
evidence.
let's back up. Real quickly, what is hyperthermia?
So that would be an elevated body temperature.
All right. And as you understand, whatever excited delirium is, that was a hallmark of an issue that was noticed, recognized under
Yes.
hyperthermia,
Yes.
under excited delirium. Is that correct?
Yes.
So the medical records, to your knowledge, would indicate what his body temperature was at the time of admission into the hospital. Is that correct as a standard protocol?
Yeah, it's a standard.
And you didn't mention it?
I did not mention it.
Well, real quickly, if it had been noted in the medical records, would you have mentioned that?
Most likely.
All right, thank you. I have nothing further.
On that topic? Nope. Do any of the jurors have a question for Dr. Paul? Dr. Paul, I don't see any questions, so you're out of here.
All right, thank you.
Yep, thank you.
Please state your name for the record.
Tony Lynn Mold.
What was your relationship to Alexander Rios?
I was Alex's mother.
Did he live with you?
Yes, he did.
How old was Alex when he died?
27, 26, 27.
May I approach the picture?
You may.
Showing you what has been marked as State's Exhibit 4 and State's Exhibit 5. You okay? Can you identify this?
This is my son Alex. Taken the summer before he passed away.
Okay, thank you. And what is Exhibit 5?
Exhibit 5 is my son Alex and his two sons, Marcus and Anthony.
And how old are the children?
11 and probably 4.
And this picture was taken about the same time as this
About
one?
the same time.
The summer before he passed?
Mhm.
Since that picture was taken, did Alex have another child?
He did. He had a daughter that was born 2 days before he died. So he never did get to meet her.
And what's her name?
Riley.
Your Honor, I'd like to publish these to the jury with your permission.
Any objection? No objection. Go ahead.
At various times, there have been descriptions of who Alex was. And unfortunately, because of the circumstances of his passing, that's going to be an issue here. So if you would, please tell us what kind of man Alex was.
Alex was kind. He was funny. He was a hard worker. Natural athlete. He loved sports.
What kind of sports?
Baseball, basketball, football.
Was he a active participant, or was he
was.
more of an
No, growing up.
active observer?
Well, later it was observer, but growing up, he played sports all through high school and junior high school, and he loved sports. I remember going on vacations, and he would, March Madness. We'd always be watching basketball on TV or on the radio, and he knew everything about all the statistics, baseball.
Is that something that he shared with his children?
Yes, they played a lot of basketball together, shooting hoops in the driveway. They would play, baseball a little bit, but the youngest one was a little bit young to, catch the ball, but they would pass the football and things like that.
Now, it's fair to say Alex was not without his flaws.
Correct.
Did Alex have an addiction issue?
He did.
Are you able to talk about that? Did you experience it personally with him?
Oh, yes. Oh, yes.
How did he deal with it?
He struggled with it from, being in high school, right after high school, and but he still had graduated. He continued playing football and all the sports, and it took a hold of him like right after high school.
Did he seek help about it?
He did. We went through Licata. The family got involved. We did an intervention many times. We were at Glen Bay or some of the different, I can't think of the name of them, Rock Creek. But over the years, we we went into some of those abuse or those clinics, and he came out and he was fine for a while. But as in between, I mean, he was working. He was doing what he needed to do until he would get back into it.
Now, relative, and I know that this is difficult, because I have to make this point of reference, so I'm going to apologize in advance.
Okay.
But relative to the time of Alex's passing, where was he at in his drug treatment regimen? Was he clean? Was he not clean?
We thought he was clean at the time that summer that this happened. I mean, it happened in the fall, but in the summer, he seemed fine. For the first time in his life, he opened a bank account. He joined the Eagles in Wakeman. He just seemed like he was a real citizen for the first time. He was doing things with the kids and with us and spending time with us. And he was spending time with the rest of his family, going to family functions, which it was sporadic, as he was growing up. So.
Now, let's talk about that period of time immediately prior to his arrest and incarceration in September of 2019. Where was Alex in his drug treatment continuum at that time?
We think he was using, but he wasn't using, when his drug addiction was the worst, he was a heroin addict. But for 2 or 3 years, he wasn't using heroin. It was probably meth or something. But we don't even know that for sure. It was one of his girlfriends was using it, and that's when I thought that he was actually having psychological problems because of some of the things that were going on. But then he seemed okay, so we thought he was fine and he wasn't doing anything. And that's how it was left before he, right when that happened. We didn't think he was even using again, but we weren't sure.
You were present the night that Alex was apprehended by the Wakeman police, I believe it was?
Yes, it was.
Can you describe that event that evening and his actions?
Yes. We were all sleeping, and I hear knocking at the door. And thankfully, nobody else woke up. My husband didn't wake up. Our grandson didn't wake up. And I go to the door, and it must have been just the police chief or the police. I don't even really remember. And they said they were looking for Alex. And and I don't know if they even explained what was going on, but there was a warrant, and they were looking for him. And they actually had to come in and search my house.
Did you get permission to do that?
Well, no, they didn't. I don't think they asked for permission. They came in because they were looking for him and they were going to arrest him. And so they looked through every bedroom. They even came into my bedroom and woke my husband up and looked into our bedroom. I'm like, he's not here. So then they continued, looking in the garage and in the basement. And they did find him in the basement. I didn't know he was there. I didn't know what was going on. Like I said, we were sleeping.
Did you ever tell him strike that? That's okay. That's all right. I need you to now talk to us about the time when Alex was in the hospital after this incident. Can you do that?
I can.
I'd like you to tell me, did you have questions about this event? Well, strike that. Thank you. How did you first find out that Alex had been involved in an incident in the Richland County Jail?
I missed a phone call. We were getting Anthony, our grandson, ready for school. And so, when it's chaotic, sometimes you're not paying attention to your phone, and I saw I missed a call. And I told my husband, and I can't remember which one of us called back to find out that something happened in the jail and that Alex was in the hospital, Ohio, I can't remember the name of the jail or the hospital in Mansfield, and that I should probably go up there. And he would not give me any information on what happened or anything. So as I'm driving there, because my husband had to take our grandson to school, and I'm talking to my other son and family on the drive there, letting them know I didn't know what was going on, but, just...
Okay, when you got to the hospital, you introduced yourself.
I did.
Did they tell you where Alex was?
Yes, they took me up to his room where...
Could you describe, if you would please, the condition that Alex was in at the point in time when you entered his room?
I'm sure he was just hooked up to a ventilator, eyes closed, just uncontrollably shaking, just tremors throughout his whole body.
Is it fair to assume that you had questions of the doctors?
Yes.
Did they answer those questions?
Yes and no. I mean, I don't think they knew everything that happened to Alex.
Did they give you a prognosis or?
Did they give me a prognosis? No, they didn't know for days. And I didn't understand what they were saying and what they were talking about. I had to call my niece, who is a nurse at the stroke unit in Massillon area, and she came and she helped me get through understanding some of what the doctors and what they were saying, because we thought that maybe he would be okay. We didn't know. And I guess they were trying to tell us the part of his brain that thinks or can ever do anything was gone. The only part of his brain left was the involuntary, and that he probably would never really wake up.
So, did there come a point in time when you had to make a decision about the continuation of
Yes.
medical treatment for Alex as his mother?
Yes.
Did you make that decision?
We did. There was a gentleman that came in that talked about hospice. We're like, hospice? It just didn't seem real. We couldn't believe that. And then, talking to, my niece and the doctors and the nurses, we understood that he probably was never going to be okay. And if they took him off a ventilator, he may be okay, he may not be. So we did end up having to make that decision to take him off the ventilator because they couldn't keep him like that forever. And it was hard because it was my other son's birthday that week, and we didn't want him to die on that day. So it was just, yeah, we came to the conclusion that we would have to do that on that Friday. And I felt like I felt like they thought we were dragging it out, but we really weren't. We weren't ready.
Okay, when you say we, who are you referring to?
My husband, Alex's dad, Alex's stepmom, his brother, his sister, we were all there. And I made sure when we decided to do it, all the family would be there.
All right.
Because, we all loved him, no matter what.
So the decision was made.
Yeah.
He was disconnected from life support. Were you present when that happened?
I was. It was the hardest thing.
How long did Alex survive after he was removed?
Not long, 15, 20 minutes. No, this is the best of my recollection. I don't remember.
No one was sitting with a stopwatch, I'm sure.
No, it was worse than I expected it to be. I knew it wasn't going to be good, but I thought he would just pass away. But he would open his eyes and like gasped, and it's like we all just started bawling. It's like,
But he did, in fact, die.
yeah.
Did you have questions about the incident that occurred that led to his death?
Yes.
Did you ask those questions of the county jail, the Richland County jail, members and representatives of that organization?
I did not personally. My husband tried to get information, we got the hospital records. We saw in the paper that it was suicide, and like, so we didn't really know what happened. We did a lot of work to find out what happened to him. Nobody would tell us.
Did anyone, okay, did anyone at the jail ever sit down with you and lay out for you the series of events that occurred leading to Alex's hospitalization and eventual death?
No.
Did anyone tell you that it had been videoed?
I don't think so.
How much time elapsed after Alex's death until you or your husband discovered that a video existed of the incident?
I don't remember how long it was.
What was it, days, weeks, months? Do you recall?
Maybe weeks, maybe months. I don't exactly remember. I'm sorry.
That's fine. Have you seen that video?
I've seen parts of the video.
You understand that that video is being displayed here in this courtroom
I think
today?
I heard that.
How do you feel? How does your family feel now? How does your family feel now that Alex is gone?
We miss him. We're sad. We think about him. We get together, and every time we get together, we talk about him. And my grandson, a lot of times will say, "Grandma, I just wish God would bring him back." And he really thinks that that could happen. And his older son struggles with it.
Now, how old was his oldest son at the time when he passed?
Oh, goodness, 11. Marcus is now 15.
So he knew his dad,
Yeah, yeah.
and they did things together, right?
Yeah, to the racetrack. They just, yeah, they did a lot together.
A moment. I have no other questions of you, Mrs. Moult. Thank you very much.
You may proceed, Attorney Mayor.
Thank you. Like I said, good afternoon, ma'am. My name is James Mayer. I represent the gentleman seated to my right, Cooper. I'm going to try and ask you a few questions here, and I'll do the best I can to keep the questions focused, okay? All right. So, Mr. Thompson finished his questioning asking you about did any jail officials reach out to you, discussion about video, things of that nature, and you said it could have been weeks, maybe months, that kind of thing.
No, no one ever reached out to us.
Okay. From the jail or sheriff's department?
Either.
Okay. I'm guessing at some point you did have contact with BCI and the prosecutor?
I reached out at one time to the prosecutor. I can't remember when it was.
So,
It's been 4 years.
right. And so you didn't hear from the prosecutors immediately after this either?
No,
Or even within months or after that?
Objection.
I don't remember. I don't.
Well, I think there were questions raised, so I'll overrule.
The point is there was a lengthy passage of time before anyone that would constitute prosecutors, investigative agents from BCI, sheriffs, any authorities reached out to you, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And it kind of sounds like that left you feeling as if you were in the dark.
Yes.
All right. You have eventually met Special Agent Lenhart, who's the lead investigator on the case, or is this the first time you've met him?
I've met him before.
And how long ago was that?
A week or two, maybe a month ago.
Okay. All right. And so I do want to talk about the history a little bit here. Okay. Really just a couple points I want to make with you. Of course, you told the jury all about your son. You heard about that in opening statement. He's an athlete, had kids, all of those things. He was 28 years old, is that right?
27.
27. Okay. Of course, you mentioned in response to questions from Mr. Thompson that he also had, it sounds like, what would amount to a lengthy struggle with drug addiction.
Correct.
And best of your recollection, that started around the time he was age 16,
In that time frame, 16, 17.
and that persisted up until his passing.
Oh, on and off.
Sure. And by on and off, it means there were periods of time where he was in recovery and doing well, right? But if I'm understanding your testimony, those usually would be bracketed by relapses and that kind of thing. Yes? So when we talk about when the police arrived at your residence, that was the wake of the police department, correct?
Correct.
And that was September 18th, just after 11 p.m. or so, give or take?
Correct.
And you're indicating you were at home with your husband?
Yes, we're sleeping.
And you were sleeping. Was Alex living with you at the time?
Yes, he was.
Okay. And it's fair to say that during his adult years, he just kind of bounced around, right?
What do you mean?
As far as where he stayed?
No, well, he lived with us most of the time, so I wouldn't say he bounced around.
Okay. So most of the time he lived with you?
Yes.
Okay. And so he was certainly living with you on September the 18th?
Correct.
Okay. And what you recall about that night is you were awakened by the police showing up at your house. That's probably a pretty scary thing if you don't know why that is, right?
It was, yes.
Okay. But not long after they arrived, they made you aware of why it was they had come, right?
Correct.
And there had been like a disturbance at the girlfriend's place,
Yes.
right?
Correct.
Okay. So they were investigating like a domestic incident, right?
Right.
Okay. And this is the girlfriend that he relapsed with, right?
Your
No.
Honor, excuse me, no,
No.
object as to relevance. She's not a witness, she's not on our witness list, she's not on his witness list.
Hang on. It would be only what you know as far as your knowledge. So
Okay.
I would sustain it as to only her knowledge.
Different girlfriend.
Yes.
Okay. All right.
This girlfriend didn't do drugs.
This one. Okay. All right. And so she had originally called the police, and then they also showed up at your house in connection with an unrelated warrant out of Richland County.
That it must have showed up, correct.
So it
Which-
was, really,
Yes.
it was like a dual purpose. They were at your place.
Your Honor, objection. Now he's telling her, he's asking her about what police are doing.
Hang on. I don't think.
Well, they made her aware.
I think it's based on her knowledge, so
Yeah.
I'll overrule it if she knows, if they gave her that information.
And they did, correct?
Correct.
Yes. And what you understood is for both those reasons, they were looking for Alex.
Yes.
Okay. And you didn't deny them entry or anything like that?
No, but yeah, they didn't ask. They were coming in to look for him.
All right. And that continued for approximately how long before they located him?
Maybe a half an hour.
Half an
20
hour.
minutes.
Okay. And how would you describe the places that they searched? Where did they look? You kind of talked about
Everywhere.
that.
They came into our bedroom in the night, looked throughout the house, looked in the basement, in the garage.
Okay.
I think they looked up through the property, looking around for him.
Okay. At no point in time did he come out and surrender or anything?
I don't know. I wasn't in the basement when he came, when they,
All right.
I don't know.
Right. In other words, they went down to the basement and that's where they found
And
him.
they found it, yes.
All right. And what you do know is he was ultimately placed in handcuffs, restraints, correct?
Correct.
And he was let out of your basement and into police custody in the back of the cruiser.
Correct. Yes, they let me talk to him before he left.
And
He
that
seemed
stands to reason that he was doing fine and
Yeah.
he was otherwise compliant with the police.
Correct.
With the exception of not coming out until they found him.
Right, but he seemed fine.
Fair enough. All right. And so, tragically, that's the last time you saw him until he was in the hospital.
Right.
Did he call you from the jail or anything like
No.
that?
No, I don't think he had been in long enough because he told me, Mom, I'll call you tomorrow.
Okay.
Never.
All right. Now, you talked about when you had these really, really difficult meetings with doctors and medical staff at the hospital about how to continue care, decisions like that, right? Okay. And you spoke openly with medical staff about Alex and his son.
Probably, I don't remember, but I probably did. I'm very open.
Right. In fact, you told them things like what you told the jury, that he had struggled intermittently with drug abuse, yes?
Probably.
Okay. You indicated that he had been clean and sober throughout the summer. That's true, right?
True.
And then you also told them that somewhere about 3 to 4 weeks prior, he started doing methamphetamines again. Yes?
Probably. If they said I said it, then I probably did.
Yeah, and you want to tell them that so they can understand what's going on with him, because you became aware that he had positive for amphetamines in his system at the hospital, right?
I don't know
Rejection.
that.
Only if you,
I don't know that.
First of all,
not-
Your Honor, it wasn't amphetamines.
okay, hold on.
Or, excuse me.
It was, I think it
Strike
was.
that. It was. I thought it was method.
Only your knowledge. If you don't recall, you don't recall. So I would.
You
I
did
would
not
just
know
think-
that.
I don't think I knew that at the time.
That's fair, okay. But you wanted to make sure they knew whatever they needed to know about him, and you discussed his drug use.
Probably.
I just want to add real quick. You may have seen the tension between these two attorneys. I'm just now editing day 2, and they have it out. Like these two sets are, this tension builds and builds and builds throughout. It's, I haven't seen this before in this large of a trial. It's wow.
Okay. You also told them at the hospital that you weren't sure whether he took methamphetamine before he was arrested or if he somehow got some at the jail.
Yeah, I wouldn't know how he would get it at the jail. He wasn't there very long.
Right.
That surprised me that he could. But he didn't seem to be on anything when they picked him up, so I don't know.
You also told them, in addition to struggles with methamphetamines, that he also previously had struggles with heroin.
Correct.
Did I read in the medical reports that you were aware that he also had an overdose at some point in time on heroin?
Yes.
An overdose, as you understand it, is a very serious situation that can
Correct.
cause death, right?
Correct.
But stands to reason they were able to save him in that circumstance.
Correct.
Was he hospitalized?
Yes.
And you know what I'm talking about, in the previous overdose?
Yes.
Okay. Now, you talked about how there would be pockets of time when he was doing better and things of that nature, and you described some of that to the jury with respect to how he sees kids and working and things like that, right? But it would be fair to say that probably as the drugs came and went, probably marked when those pockets of good times and bad times were, right?
Correct.
Because even as recently as May of 2015 or 2019, just 4 months before this, you had contacted the Lehman police regarding him harassing you, Alex, right?
Right, right. And sometimes I had to do what I had to do to keep him in line.
Right. And sometimes it became too much and you involved the Wakeman police.
Right. To talk to him. That's all they would do,
Yeah.
if they did.
Try and get him calmed down.
Or to listen.
Yeah.
Sometimes it was easier that way.
So it was not uncommon for you to call the police on him when you needed to if you were having struggles with him.
A few times I did, yes.
When I was listening to your testimony and also reviewing the medical records, in addition to the struggles with drugs, you've also told the jury and also the medical staff, I think, about some mental health issues that you identified as.
I thought they were mental health issues. But I think he struggled with mental health and he was misdiagnosed growing up. And I think that's typical these days.
Don't disagree with you. I think that you talked specifically with the medical staff about issues with anxiety,
Yes.
depression.
Yes.
What else concerns did you have?
Just anxiety is the main thing that I remember.
Right. And you would agree that when you're dealing with issues like anxiety, depression, those can be intensified or exacerbated when you're using drugs like methamphetamine, right?
Thank
Your
you.
Honor is calling for medical conclusion.
Only if you, based on her experience.
I said it could be. I don't know.
Okay. You've been around Alex at
His whole
points in
life.
time
Correct.
when you suspected he was under the influence of illegal drugs, whether meth or heroin, right?
Yes.
Okay. Moral stuff.
Sorry.
It's okay. It's okay. It's all right. Let me know if you need a minute. Okay. Your experience with him when he was under the influence of drugs like methamphetamine exhibit behaviors that were concerning to you?
I guess maybe just being paranoid or afraid.
Paranoid?
Yeah.
Right. You talk about periods of time when he was doing well, and those are marked by periods of sobriety, correct?
Correct.
And so it stands to reason that you wanted him to be clean and sober, correct?
Correct.
So of course the opposite stands to reason as well. When he wasn't clean and he was using, that that was reflected in his behavior, his decision-making, and that kind of thing. His quality of life, yes?
Yes,
And that of those around him, right?
correct.
Ms. Bold, I appreciate you coming in today. Sorry for your loss. And I know it's difficult to answer these questions, and I appreciate you for doing that. That's all I have for you.
Prosecutor Tom?
Thank you, Roger.
Sure.
Ms. Mold, when the Wakeman policemen arrived at your home in the early morning hours or late night hours, did they announce themselves?
Yes,
Did they announce themselves at the door?
yes,
At any point after that, when they searched your home and your property, did they announce themselves to the house at large? Did they ever announce themselves again that you were?
no,
So it's fair to say that if somebody was sleeping in another room and they didn't hear the front door,
They didn't.
they wouldn't have known who was in the house.
no, my husband didn't know.
Well, specifically.
Oh, Alex might not have known either, right.
Where did he normally sleep?
He had a bedroom on the first floor.
How was he dressed at that time? Were you, strike that, I apologize. Ms. Mold, were you present when he was taken into custody?
Yes.
And led out of your home?
I think so.
He was in handcuffs?
Yes, yes,
Did he fight with the officers?
no,
Was he screaming unintelligibly?
no.
Was he communicating in any way at all?
He was just being quiet and he
How
was
was he
listening
dressed?
to what they were saying. He had probably sweatpants and a t-shirt and tennis shoes on. And I said, he said, Mom, I'll call you tomorrow. And I thought he'd be safe.
As a part of the inventory in the jail, when he was taken into custody, I believe there's a pair of white boxer shorts. Is that what he would normally wear?
Probably, yes.
Now, as I realize it's been a long time, but as we are here today, if you can recall, was that what he was wearing in the night when he was incarcerated, when he was arrested?
I don't remember, but probably.
I have nothing further.
Thank you. Attorney Mayor?
Just a couple follow-ups back. So, when he was let out in cuffs, and he was just kind of having a conversation with you, telling you to call it,
Yeah.
it's just kind of what you would normally, if it had been you, which you wouldn't be, but if it were you getting, it's how you would behave, right? You would be compliant with the police, right?
Right,
Okay. And that's what he was doing.
right.
You were asked about some white boxers.
Yeah, I
Did
don't,
he have sweatpants on?
I believe
Or his
so.
underwear over top of them?
No,
So you don't know what kind of underwear he had on, do you?
I could guess, right.
We all could guess. Right?
Yeah.
Okay, a couple more. Prosecutor asked you, Alex could have been sleeping if he didn't know the police were there. Do you remember that line of questioning?
Right, he could have been, I don't know.
But he also asked you where's his bedroom, and you said it was on
Down
the
on the
first
first floor, and they came in at the front door. Right,
Sure. And where he was found was the basement.
right.
The police tell you he was found in a crawl space in the basement?
Yes, in the
Okay.
basement.
He didn't have a bed in the crawl space in the basement, did he?
No,
That sounds like hide and seek, right?
right, but if he saw them, he might have ran to the basement. Maybe, I mean, I don't know.
Right. Yeah. And then just kind of hid there.
Could be.
Right. That's all I have now. Thank you.
Do any of the jurors have a question for Ms. Mold? I don't see any, so ma'am, thank you. You can step down. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, I said we'd end early. There's
It's important. So it is enough to trigger this signal.
Well, we'll talk about the syndrome in a minute. Your statement was he was probably.
So I obviously spliced in day 2 because day 1 wasn't, the full 3 hours. So we went straight into day 2. And like I said, excuse me, they cut off like the start of the day and everything else. So now we're into, I believe he's a special agent for the Ohio Bureau of Criminal Investigations.
Under the influence of methamphetamine, but that's just a guess. That was your statement?
Yes.
Is that true?
It's a guess which amphetamine type drug he's under. I'm guessing methamphetamine. He's
Right.
under the influence of an amphetamine type drug.
Well, he tested presumptive positive for amphetamines.
Yes.
Does not prove he's under the influence.
The cutoff to be positive is a significant amount.
What is it? What's the cutoff?
I can't tell you on the top of my head.
Okay. Now, you have determined in this case the cause of death to be excited delirium.
Yes.
Tell us, in your opinion, what is excited delirium?
Excited delirium is a acute confusional state. It has a fairly rapid onset. It always has an underlying medical condition that causes it. In this case, the underlying medical condition is the presence of a stimulant drug in his body. It is manifested by severe agitation. When these people die, they almost die same way, immediately after they're restrained, within minutes, but almost immediately they're put in restraints, they become unresponsive, they stop breathing, and they have no pulse. And that's what happened in this case.
Well, okay. Are you a member of any professional organizations?
Yes.
Which organizations are you?
National Association of Medical Examiners and the American Academy of Forensic Sciences.
Okay. And so National Academy of Medical Examiners has been referred to in this courtroom, although not explained what it was, is NAME.
Yes.
Okay, that's what they call NAME. Do you know that organization, which you're a member of, has now, for lack of a better term, debunked excited delirium in total?
No, they have not.
Are you allowed to, per your organization, use excited delirium as a cause of death?
The organization said they do not endorse using that term as the cause of death, but they do recognize that the underlying syndrome that it refers to can cause death and is a legitimate cause of death. They now want us to say the underlying medical condition. So in this case, we would say a stimulant drug intoxication, producing a delirium syndrome, resulting in death.
Well, how does that result in his death? He didn't OD.
No.
He did not OD. Let's
No.
be clear. It was not an overdose death.
No, these are not overdose deaths.
All right. So what killed him?
How the syndrome kills has been debated like for 150 years. It's well documented in medical history going back to the 1800s. Patients have this pattern. They get this delirium syndrome, severe agitation, and about the minute they're put in restraints, they just go unresponsive, they lose their pulse, and they stop breathing. That syndrome is well documented in the medical history. What has happened is the name excited delirium has been decided it's offensive. And it's very hard for me to talk with, because it just changed, because I can't explain this without using the word, but it's offensive for various reasons. And so National Association of Medical Examiners said, do not use that name. But they're not saying it doesn't exist. the syndrome exists. You can't change something just by changing the name.
But you're not saying that by using that term, excited delirium, on your pathology report, you're saying, essentially what you're saying is, well, I don't know how he died.
Yeah, I'm saying you're dying of this syndrome.
Yeah, but you're not saying how. Give me the medical, the clear mechanism as to why he stopped breathing, why his brain didn't get any oxygen. What happened?
Nobody knows.
Well, okay, fair enough. And that's why you use this term in this case, because you don't know.
We don't know the mechanism. We know that he died of this syndrome.
Well, that's your opinion.
Yes.
You're well aware that that opinion has been greatly debated and others disagree, correct?
Yes, experts disagree.
Okay. And that no one shares your opinion except the coroner here in Richland County.
Objection. It's only if he has knowledge of who agrees and who doesn't agree with him. So only if you know who agrees and who doesn't agree. Who is everyone? Well, hold on. I'm not asking. Only if you know if he knows who agrees.
I can rephrase the question.
Okay. Right.
Do you know of anyone besides Dr. Burwell, who is the coroner in this county? You know Dr. Burwell?
I know who he is.
Okay. Besides Dr. Burwell, do you know of any other medical professional that agrees with your determination of manner of death in this case?
At the time that we did this autopsy, it was reviewed by all the doctors in our office, and there was a general agreement that was the cause of death. I have not consulted. I have not asked other people. I haven't gone around the country asking other people's opinion, but there are pathologists, I'm not the only one, who still believe or still know in their heart that in this syndrome...
Doctor, you spoke way past the question. I just asked you if you know anyone who agrees with your opinions.
Hold on. I always let them finish their answer if he's being responsive. So if you want to finish, if you think you need to finish your answer.
I'm saying I have not asked anybody else, but the people that at the time that we did the autopsy were in agreement.
Who are those people?
The pathologists in our office.
Who are they? Can I have their names?
Okay, who was working back in, there was Dr. Harshbarger, of course. There would be Dr. Casco, there would have been Dr. Brown, Dr. Upthegrove.
I'm sorry, Dr.
I'm sorry, Upthegrove, Uptegrove.
Thank you.
The doctors that were working in our office at that time.
But they didn't have any knowledge. Did they see the video?
Yes.
All of you saw the video?
We went over the video as a group.
Okay, and all those doctors were present?
To the best I can remember.
All right. Were you aware that Dr. Paul disagreed with you at the time?
I don't recall that. She may have. It's not uncommon that a fellow or a student would disagree and we try to discuss and come to some kind of a conclusion. I do not remember any disagreement that she voiced to me on this.
Okay. And if she had, who would have prevailed? Let's say if she disagreed with you, it's just you and her signature on the pathology report.
Right.
So who would have prevailed?
Well, you don't have the student have the final say. You don't have a student have the final say.
Who would
at
have
all.
prevailed? You can say it. You would have prevailed, right? It was your opinion. And if she would have disagreed, you could have overridden that and said, no, we're using excited delirium.
I could have.
Did you?
I don't think I made that decision. I think it was done together.
Okay. That's your recollection.
That's my recollection.
Okay. So let me ask you this, Doctor. When a body comes in, you told Agent Lenhart that you get an initial kind of a overview of what the body's coming down and what it's going to be. Like somebody, you use the example of, well, his body's coming down, we think it looks like a drug overdose or something like that. What was done in this case? What preliminary information did you have about Alexander Rios when he came into the Montgomery County Coroner's office?
We would have had information from the Richland County Coroner's office saying that he had died in jail, in custody. There was a altercation between him and the correction officers, and during that altercation, he suddenly went unresponsive. Then he was in the hospital for a week, and he died. And they at that time brought with them the video, so we had an opportunity to look at the video of that altercation with the corrections officers.
Who is the first person, if you remember, that came up with excited delirium?
I don't remember.
Okay. Would it have been Investigator Ball?
That is highly unlikely.
I'm sorry?
That's highly I don't remember, but he would not have done that. I mean, we wouldn't even consider talking to him about that.
But you had an initial information about what had happened, right?
Yeah, the general description of the events.
And so you don't remember if you were the one that came up with excited delirium?
I do not.
Okay. It would not have been Dr. Paul, would it?
I do not remember. I really do not remember how that came about.
Okay. And when you saw the video, what did you note about that?
Well, was the events. The guy is acting in a very bizarre manner.
Let me stop you right there. Why do you say that? Tell me specifically what you remember about that video that led you to that conclusion you just said. He's acting, in your term, very bizarre.
Okay, he's climbing on walls, jumping off of walls. He's shouting, yelling, screaming. He's not talking in a coherent manner. He may respond.
Excuse me, doctor. Let me stop you right there. What did he ever say? You said he was not talking in a coherent manner. What did he say that you didn't understand?
Well, he's just yelling and screaming.
Okay, but that's different than coherent.
It wasn't organized thoughts and sentences like we're using. He did respond at times to a question or something with a short answer, but he's not carrying on a rational conversation.
Okay, and again, that's your opinion, right?
Yes.
Okay, go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Then, at some point, the correctional officers, apparently for concern for his safety and the safety of the people around him, decided to put him in restraints. There was a struggle, and it was very difficult to put him in restraints. And typically in this syndrome, it is very hard to put a person in this excited state in restraint. One or two officers can't do it. Some more join in. And in this case, there's like 5 officers struggling pretty much as hard as they could to get him in restraint. And then at the end, he died suddenly. He at least went unresponsive suddenly. He stopped breathing. He was pulseless. During the restraint, at one point, there is an officer on top of him, or there is pressure on his back. We know that.
And what do you think of that?
I don't know what. Excuse me. Can I have water?
Yeah, we'll get you one.
We don't know what to.
I want to tell you something real quick that I just found that I thought's really interesting. There was a very extensive paper published back in 2011 that talks about excited delirium, and it was talking about how it's this unique medical condition. And let me just read you what it says. Characterized by the acute onset of agitation, aggression, distress, and possibly sudden death, while the contribution of restraint, struggle, and the use of electrical conduction devices, tasers, to the cause of death raises controversy, recent research points towards central nervous system dysfunction of dopamine signaling as the cause of the delirium and the fatal autonomic dysfunction. Victims of, they call it EXD, usually die from cardiopulmonary arrest, although the exact cause of the arrest is likely multifactorial and chronic. Unfortunately, the adequate treatment plan has yet to be established, although rapid sedation, followed closely by external cooling, IV fluids monitoring, and treatment of potential medical complications is likely critical to decrease morbidity and mortality. Neuroepileptics, benzodiazepines, and ketamine are among the potent sedating agents that have been proposed to stabilize EXD patients. While there is still much to be discovered about this pathophysiological treatment, it is hoped that this extensive review will provide both police and medical personnel with the information necessary to recognize and appropriately respond to EXD. So basically, this paper is saying, like, this thing doesn't have to be fatal if you do what you need to do to treat them right after it's discovered. Just throwing that out there. 2011, though. A lot has happened since 2011. Like, I've slept since then, so I don't remember much about 2011.
Make of that part.
Why not?
Well, people with this delirium state, in the medical literature, it reports people with this state die suddenly, or just like he did, basically, with weight on their back, without weight on their back, when they're placed on the side, and even if they're sitting in a chair. So we don't know what role that weight on his back is doing. If he could have died without the weight on the back, how can we say with certainty that the weight on his back killed him?
Okay. But, as you know, you can't change the facts. You say, well, people can die sitting in a chair or on their side. Maybe, okay, but that's not the facts of this case. He was prone on a cement floor. You're aware of that, right?
Yes.
Prone means what?
He's laying on his stomach. I'm sorry.
Go ahead. Take your time.
Okay.
Take your time.
He's laying on his stomach. Prone means you're laying on your stomach.
Okay. So he's laying on his stomach, and a cement floor is underneath him.
Yes.
Okay. We were all at the jail yesterday.
Yes.
Okay, so we viewed it. And did you take into account the size of the man who was standing on his back?
Yes.
What did you think about that?
He's a large man.
Okay. And what do you think, as a medical professional, the physical effects on a human being who's laying prone on a cement floor with a large man standing with his full weight on his back? What do you think the physical effects of a human being would be?
It would make it more difficult for him to breathe.
Or impossible?
Not necessarily. Not necessarily, but it could.
Not necessarily. I didn't say that. I said, but could it have made him unable to breathe? Did you consider that?
Yes.
Okay. And so how is it that you can't say if he's unable to breathe because of somebody's actions, right, that is not at least a contributing factor to his death?
Because people have been studying this for years, and they're experts, more experts than me, saying both sides. What, if any, effect this weight is causing? To agree it may decrease his ability to breathe. But is it decreasing his ability to breathe to the point that with a short amount of time, probably less than minutes, that that would account for a quick, sudden stoppage of the heart, unconsciousness, and ultimately death?
Maybe I didn't understand what you just said. What was the amount of the length of time that you saw? Hang on, I'm not done. That you saw Mr. Cooper? Well, you don't know who it was. You saw some officer putting pressure on Alexander Rios' back. What was the length of time that they continued that pressure on his back?
When when the full length, when the full weight of the officer was on his back, the period of time was, I think, seconds.
Okay, that was full weight. I didn't ask that question. I know that what the full weight was. What was the amount of time he had pressure on his back? Do you know? Did you try to determine that?
I don't have that. I can't remember what that time was.
Okay. Not only did you notice after he was standing on his back, right? He then, when he got off, do you remember what happened next?
This is the point where he died, I think.
And then, but what did the man who was standing on his back do next? Do you recall?
No, I do not recall what he did next.
Do you remember him kneeling on the center of his back?
I did, at this point, I don't remember that.
Okay.
I believe you.
All right. I'm asking you to believe me. I just was asking if you remember that. Would that cause? So this person, as you said, he's at least to your knowledge and sight, was unconscious at that time and unresponsive. Correct?
Yes.
Okay. Do you think there was any need to then continue to put pressure on his back?
I'm going to object at this point, Master Approach.
Yeah.
Doctor, would the length of time that somebody put pressure on Mr. Rios' back affect his ability to breathe? In other words, I guess what I'm saying is the longer the pressure is on his back, would that make it more difficult for Mr. Rios to breathe?
I don't think how long the pressure is, the length of time, is what, when it's stopping for breathing. It's going to be how much. Is it a significant amount of pressure that he can't breathe? But if it's a moderate amount, it could be a very long time. I mean, I don't quite understand where we're going.
Oh, well, okay, I'll tell you where we're going. You saw the video, and you heard Mr. Rios, did you not, struggling to breathe. Is that a fair statement?
Yes.
Okay, so what caused him to struggle to breathe?
The whole position he's being in with weight on his back.
Well, but who had the weight on his back?
The person that was pushing on it.
Right. The other four officers, if you watch that video, each had a limb. Is that fair to say? Does that refresh your recollection?
Yeah.
And so they were not putting pressure on his back.
As far as I could tell.
Okay. And so would you agree or not, Doctor, that trying to gain control of a limb would not medically affect his ability to breathe?
I would agree.
Okay. So again, you ask where we're going. What affected his ability to breathe?
Pressure on his back.
By one person.
And being in the prone position.
And being in the prone position,
Yeah.
right. Which he was.
Yes.
That's a fact.
Yes.
And only one officer applied pressure to his back. And by the way, we keep saying back. What portion of the body was he actually, anatomically, what portion of his back was he applying pressure?
The chest region. The chest region, upper back.
Upper back.
Yeah.
Okay. And so where are the lungs located?
In the chest.
Okay.
Yes.
So I know we know that. I'm just trying to, for the record. So that would be someone standing on his back or putting pressure on his back would do what physically to his torso?
It would put pressure on his torso.
Compress it. Would that be a fair statement?
Yes.
And it would compress the lungs.
Yes.
Correct?
Yes.
That's a question. I don't mean to testify. What? Tell us when you breathe how the lungs work. When you take a breath in, what happens?
What causes the lungs to expand?
Well, okay.
Okay.
Do the lungs expand? That was my question.
Okay, the lungs expand.
Okay. And what does cause the lungs to expand?
You're lifting your rib cage up and you're pulling the diaphragm down.
Okay. And so when someone's standing on your back, you're unable to, the lungs are unable to expand. Is that a fair statement?
Well, they don't just stop. I mean, there's still some breathing going on. It limits the ability to expand.
And how does that affect someone medically? When you can't breathe or when you're struggling to get air, how does that affect someone medically?
So then, obviously, they're not getting as much air as they would usually get.
Well,
Yes.
so I said medically. Right?
Medically, they may have less oxygen, but they're not bringing in as much air.
And what does that do to a person when you get less oxygen than you need? What medically happens?
We don't know that he got less than he needs. We know he got less
didn't
than
ask
he
that
could would
question.
have normally.
Doctor, I didn't ask you that question. I'm asking you now, just medically, what happens to a person who can't get enough oxygen in their lungs? What happens medically to that person?
If the person can't get enough oxygen in their lungs to survive, they will go into hypoxia and die.
Tell us what epoxy is.
Lack of oxygen
To the
body.
To the brain, right?
Well, brain, all the organs.
Right, but isn't that what really would cause a death? And I know you disagree with this, but in this case, if somebody found that was the cause, wouldn't that be the mechanism that he wasn't getting enough oxygen to his brain, and that's why he died? Correct?
Well, if there wasn't another cause of death that could have just as well have happened.
Right, I know, but I'm saying medically, isn't that would have been the reason if somebody who disagrees with your opinion saying the pressure on his back caused him not to get enough oxygen and therefore he didn't get any oxygen to his brain, and that's how he died?
People, there are experts that would say that.
Okay.
Yes.
And you know that there are in this very case?
Yes.
Okay. Before I show you the video, Doctor, I just want to ask, why is it let me show this to you. And you know, it's been marked for identification previously. This states exhibit number 1.
Yes.
Can you tell me what that is, please?
This is a copy of the autopsy report that was written by Dr. Paul.
Okay. And signed by you?
Yes.
Your signature, Tom?
Yes.
Okay. Have you reviewed this?
Yes.
Okay. Recently?
Yes.
Okay. Why is there no notation in this pathology report? This is a pathology report?
Autopsy report.
Autopsy report, I'm sorry. Why is there no notation of the fact that you and or Dr. Paul watched the video?
We don't do that in our office. We watch a lot of videos, door cam, body cam, video, cell phone surveillance. We do this routinely, it's useful, but we never incorporate that in the autopsy report. The autopsy report deals with the autopsy itself.
But you've used that and you've told us this, it's very important to get the history and the police reports and all the information before you can determine the cause of death, right?
Yes.
So it's clear that you at least took that into consideration, the video, to determine cause of death.
Yes.
Okay. Dr. Paul told us that you told her not to put that in the report. Is that accurate? She said she asked you.
I find that highly unlikely. A long time ago, I do not remember any conversation like that, but in our office, we don't do that. So if it came up, I would say that that's not the way we do things in our office.
Okay, and if that's the explanation, that's it. Do you know why? Why don't you think that's important to put in a? Wouldn't it be more complete to say what you looked at and what you used to come to your conclusion?
Well, it might be, but we're reviewing a lot of things, and we don't list that in our autopsy report. Everything that we review.
Okay.
We review medical records, the police reports, the videos, talk to the police, whatever. We don't list those things in our autopsy report.
All right. Isn't a symptom of excited delirium, if you believe in that is hypothermia? Elevated,
Hyperthermia.
which means? Tell the
Yeah,
jury.
elevated fever,
High body
high blood pressure, high temperature.
Okay. And you're aware from reviewing the medical records that did not exist in this case?
No, there's no hyperthermia.
Okay. Did you consider that before you? Isn't that unusual? Don't they usually have very high body temperature?
No, that's actually an unusual finding. Like about 7% of people that have the syndrome will develop a high temperature, and they're considered a unique category of this syndrome. It's separate. They have people with high temperature have a higher rate of death than people that don't have a high temperature. But the people that have high temperature are a minority of the people that die in this syndrome.
Okay. You also told Agent Leinhart that the urine screen was just, in your words, just to quote, it's just a screening test, not a definite test.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Judge, can I have Agent Leinhart help?
Yes, absolutely.
State's Exhibit number 3. Doctor, I'll just show you this real quick. This is State's Exhibit number 3. It's a thumb drive, and the video's on it.
Okay.
All right, so I'm going to attempt to play that for you. Before we watch this, Doctor, I'm going to ask you, just so you know what's coming, that once you see this video, is this the video you watched? Okay. So
Okay.
Just keep that in mind when you're looking at it. Yeah, would you? Thank you. So, for the record, I'm going to start to play the portion of State's Exhibit number 3. Go ahead, Eric, if you would, please.
What's his last name?
Rios.
Rios, I need you to come down so we can. Okay. Alright. Alright. I'm not gonna call anybody unless you come down from down here. Okay, this is the last time I'm gonna ask you. I've asked you for like 5 minutes. I'm not gonna do it anymore. Okay? We're gonna put you in a restraint chair for your safety. Do not listening and be a writer, causing a risk to harm yourself. We don't have time to continue that all night. Okay? Alright, this is the last time I'm asking you. We're gonna go in. We're gonna go ahead and put you in the chair. Alright. Come on down. No. Handcuff. Is that a yes or no? Go ahead and turn around. Put your hands behind your back and cuff up for me. If not, we're gonna come get you. Alright. No? Okay, we're coming to get you. Let's go. Go. Go to the hands behind his back here.
Come on, man. Here's your taser. Baby. Crazy. Take off. That's a taser. I'm not even putting him. Glasses, let me go get them good. Go. Taser. Ow. Ow. Already. Can someone try tasing? Can you explain to me? Because you're a dumbass. No, you're the dumbass.
you see at this point that there's being pressure applied to his back from a foot?
Yes.
Okay. And that's at, well, it's been, Eric, could you back it up a few seconds? Please. Keep going. A little bit more. Okay. Go ahead and play.
Hey, you were.
So at 3:27 it starts, right?
Yes.
Okay. Now, is he still struggling at this point?
Yes.
What's he exhibiting? What's he exhibiting there? Is he? He's not. He's
Moving
not
his
up.
head, he's squirming, you know.
Does he? He doesn't. He's to this. Well, I'm going to play the whole thing and I'll ask some questions. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Fucking took out all himself.
Really?
Yeah, he's like.
Oh! Your hand behind your back.
Oh shit.
Somebody take it.
He's on some type of. I believe.
Keep playing.
You need to. Do we have anybody else available? Rios? Rios. Alexander Rios. Yeah, he thinks he's supposed to be out of here and.
Doctor, would you agree from here on out he's not making any more noise, not breathing? Can you tell that?
I don't remember that, but I'm going to take your word for it.
Well, no, don't take my word. I'm asking you to watch the video. If you disagree, that's fine. Go ahead and play.
I just don't know.
Jack, I think the question's from here on out.
Yeah, we'll
He's
play.
not given an opportunity to watch it, and he says
He's already seen it. Yes, he has had the opportunity to watch.
Okay. Well,
Any determination of cause of death because of it.
Turn it off. Let go of the car. I'll fucking. Let go of the car.
Right up there on the wall.
Pull that thing out.
Get a pair of shackles.
You got another hit? Can you come? Where's the other hit? I got it. Where's that? You know, we don't. I only have one hand guard. I can't.
You want a pair of shackles?
Okay, I'll bring another hand.
So I can't.
You know you're not. Get up, all right.
Grab some. Oh, he's got them. He got shackles.
Ready?
All right.
Yeah.
Shackles.
Give me the other hand. Bring it forward from guys. You got it.
Shackle down there.
Let's go up.
Number two, babe?
Give me 1 second.
Where's the ring?
Is that something you two, babe? Let's slide this foot out there.
Who's that? Right.
That might be able to cinch up around his ankles. Do his ankles now, so. Keep going. Okay, let's come on the other side of the wall. When we come up, we're going straight up into the chair. All right. Good, we're out behind you. And Laura behind you.
I got you.
All right, I got the chair so it doesn't move. Okay. You two ready? Just turn them. Straight up. Hear me? Get up.
He's turning blue. Call squad. Master control, call the squad.
Lead down. One side. One side. Laying on the side.
Give 1 sec. Try to give it some art to make sure everything's going okay for him.
Give him the 80.
So we just watched State's Exhibit number 3. Doctor, is that the video you reviewed? Do you
Yes.
Do you recall that? Okay.
Yes, as I remember it, yes.
Okay, so that is the video you saw. I just want to be sure. Oh.
That's what I think. It's been a while, but yes, I think that's the one I saw.
So now that you said before when I asked you, you didn't notice or didn't remember that him kneeling on his back, right? Did you see that happen when he finally released his foot from his back, that he immediately, within seconds, kneeled on the center of his back?
Yes.
Okay. Would that affect a person's ability to breathe likewise?
It would affect his ability to breathe.
Okay. The statements have been made that he struggled all the way until he was cuffed. Do you agree with that after watching that video?
He became unresponsive, stopped struggling shortly before, sometime before the cuffs were on, yes.
Okay. And so, Doctor, do you remember how many times you watched that video before you determined cause of death? Or did you just watch it one time?
Oh, no.
Many times?
Several times, but I don't know how many times.
Okay. And so having seen that again, and I know it's been a while, right? It's probably been a few years, right? Having seen that again and knowing that there are other pathologists that disagree with your determination, can you understand why another medical professional would disagree with your professional opinion?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I'm not saying that they're incompetent or they're lying. I think they have an honest opinion, and I can see how they would come to that conclusion, yes.
Okay. Tell us what you know to be positional asphyxia.
Positional asphyxia is when somebody is in a position where they're unable to breathe.
Because of that, they're unable to breathe because of the position they're in, right?
Yes.
Did you or would you consider that in this case?
I would give it consideration.
Okay. And did you?
Yes.
And what led you to not determining that was cause of death in this case?
Well, the short period of time that he's having trouble breathing, not, hours. It's a short period of time when he's not trying to breathe. And we don't know how much he is unable to breathe, how much less than normal he's able to breathe. They have done studies where they put weights on people, like 250 pounds, and the experts say that is not life-threatening. There's probably more than 225 pounds on him. But I don't know if this difference in weight is enough to make such a dramatic change where it's not life-threatening to almost instantly killing him. And I know that people with this syndrome, even without weight and not in this position, just sitting in the restraint chair, die just as we just saw. In fact, in Montgomery County, several years ago, we had a case. Nobody was ever on him. I saw the video. He's sitting in that restraint chair that you saw. And just when they had him clamped in, he just went like that, stopped breathing. He was pulseless, and it was just that quick. It was over.
But in this case, again, Doctor, I'd ask you not to change the facts. The facts in this case are that he did have pressure on his back, and his lungs, to what you said, would have most likely been compressed and deprived of oxygen. So don't change the facts. I'm asking you not to change the facts. That happened in this case. I understand you're saying you used some other case somewhere.
I believe counsel's testifying with respect to what happened in this case. That's what it is.
Okay. I'll let you rephrase. I'll just leave.
Well, would you disagree with me, Doctor, that that's the facts of this case? That's what you just watched? Is the man was putting pressure on his back and made it difficult for him to breathe? Do you disagree with that?
No, I agree with that.
Okay. So again, I know you've seen other cases where there's no pressure, but that's not this case, is it?
No.
Okay. So, Doctor, are you saying it's your belief that if he had that if he didn't have any pressure or somebody wasn't standing on his back, that he would have died anyways?
I don't know.
Well, I know, but you're an expert. You're a
Yeah.
pathologist. That's
Yeah.
what your job is, right? So do you have an opinion of that?
My opinion is we don't have enough information because we know without pressure on the back, these patients die. They die too with pressure on the back. We don't know what role that pressure did. Is that pressure changing the chain of events, or would he have died without the pressure? We don't have that information. I can't say and like come up here and stand and testify to a reasonable degree of certainty that I know that pressure on his back killed him. Because I know he could have died without any pressure on his back.
Yeah, but your job is to render a medical professional opinion. You do that every single day as a cause of death.
Yes.
So you're saying, well, I don't know. But first of all, you guess that he's under the influence of methamphetamine. You guess, right? Your words.
I'm guessing which drug it is. I know
Right.
he's under a stimulant drug, and stimulant drugs cause this thing.
Right. Isn't that the leap, though? Like you would be to say the pressure on his back causes death. You're making a leap that he's under the influence when the fact is he tested presumptive positive for amphetamines. And to your quote, that's just a screening test, not a definitive test. Right?
Yes, but it's finding something. It's
I
finding an
understand.
amphetamine type drug,
Right.
a stimulant drug in the system.
Just like the video shows him standing on his back. Just like that.
Yes.
And then you have to take the next logical step. For your amphetamine to methamphetamine, to pressure on the back, to him not being able to breathe, not getting oxygen to his brain and dying right in front of him. Right?
I think if I follow you, yes.
Good. That's all I have to.
Before cross-examination.
Okay, folks, that's it. While we were watching, I was doing some research on excited delirium, and it seems like it's just starting to be not recalled, but denounced as a cause of death. It became really popular in the early 2000s with organizations telling law enforcement agencies and things like that, hey, here's this way to describe that thing that happens when you are super rough with someone and they die in your custody. It's this term that will cover it. And then in recent years, they've started saying, okay, you're using this to cover your ass, and that's not okay. So you want it up, make up your mind. And so more and more, all of the agencies are one by one, not agencies, associations. Sorry, my brain is not working today. All of the associations. This is what happens when I get stressed. Like yesterday, worrying about my son. Then today, nothing works. All of the associations are one by one putting out papers. Just last month, the Association of Emergency Medical Physicians or something like that put out a paper and said, okay, don't use this anymore. So a couple years ago when this happened, it was still kind of an okay thing to use. But looking back now, if it happened today, it wouldn't be okay to use that term. And I mean, technically, what happened is everything happened. Take one variable out of the mix and it probably wouldn't have happened. But there's also ways that it could have been mitigated. It could have, like, if you didn't sit on top of him, he wouldn't have died. If you would have provided him treatment right away, he would have died. It's just a matter of, were you justified in holding him down because of the way he was acting out of control? And that, I don't know. That's a hard decision to make. Our jury is going to have a very difficult time analyzing this, and I'm very much looking forward to that. I think it's going to be pretty interesting to have a mock jury that is really debating their own personal opinions on this, because I know a lot of us have very varying opinions on a lot of these topic. So that'll be neat. All right. I will see you all tomorrow, 11 a.m., same time, same place. I might even be wearing the same shirt. Who knows? Have a wonderful rest of your day. And tell your kids, slow down, drive safe. Life's short. Hug your kids. Love you all. Take care.